have common sense.
Let's see how Earth responds to that.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Kasparian with you guys. We've got a lot of news for you all as usual, and unfortunately, as usual, some dangerous news. And you know, the authoritarian tendencies of several governments, including ours, grows by the day. We also have a couple of really interesting interviews for you guys. Congresswoman Delia Ramirez is joining us a little bit later in this hour, so make sure that you're sticking around for that. And Mohammed Mustafa is a doctor. It's gone to Gaza, and he's going to join us at 8 o'clock. So both are compelling. Hope you stick around for all that. Anna, how you doing?
I am exhausted. I think I'm kind of over traveling, but I've been traveling a lot, as you can imagine. But it's good to be on the show with you, Cenk, and there's so much to get to, including this update on the Israeli pedophile who might get away with what he attempted to do here in the United States.
All right, let's do it.
Let's get into it.
One of those pedophiles is an Israeli government official who his government allowed to fly back to Israel after he had been charged in that sting operation for using technology to lure a minor for sex.
So it really shouldn't be surprising that the senior Israeli cybersecurity official didn't fly back to the United States in order to appear for his arraignment this week on Wednesday. And it's going to be difficult to get Tom Alexandrovich back to the United States in order to face the felony charges that he absolutely should be facing, because of the fact that the FBI in a sting operation caught this guy attempting to lure a 15-year-old to meet with him for sex. Now, again, this was part of a multi-week investigation that was done by local police in Las Vegas and the FBI. And they were specifically targeting, child sex predators. According to Reuters, Alexandrovich was due to be at a court in Henderson, just outside Las Vegas, on Wednesday for a felony arraignment hearing, according to court records. Local media, including the Las Vegas Review-Journal, said he skipped the hearing. By the way, I should note, and I didn't know this until a few minutes ago, it turns out that the Las Vegas Review-Journal is owned by Miriam Adelson. It's incredible. Anyway, so let me give you some more of this reporting. So Alexandrovich's lawyers argue, we had an agreement with the prosecutors here, and that Alexandrovich did not have to appear in person. That was the agreement. And here's what he told the judge, okay? This is David Chesnoff. He is the individual, the lawyer representing the alleged pedophile here, Alexandrovich. He says, quote, "The state and I had an agreement, and we informed your staff that he would not be here. I did not know the protocol that the court has." You're a lawyer. How do you not know the court's protocol? But anyway, he continues, "I'm in constant contact with Alexandrovich. I can show you my phone. Just this morning, I instructed him that he didn't have to be here because normally that's the practice that we've employed for the 45 years I've been doing this. Maybe for Israeli pedophiles, but the 7 other individuals who were caught up in this sting operation are expected to show up in person to their arraignment." But credit to the judge. And by the way, let's not miss what the attorney said here. The first few words of that statement was "the state," meaning the state attorney is the person he made some sort of agreement with, allegedly. And the state attorney is the Israeli-born prosecutor who of course posts all sorts of disgusting stuff about Palestinians and how they all deserve to die on X and social media. So apparently there was some sort of agreement with her and the attorney representing the alleged pedophile here. So the judge noted that the district attorney's office does not have the authority to waive felony arraignment appearances and told Alexandrovich's lawyer that your oral request without anything before the court to waive his appearance here today is hereby denied. But I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding here because he says the state, he didn't say the district attorney. So we really need to figure out who's wheeling and dealing here. And I suspect it is in fact the state attorney. Now later, the judge also granted a request to allow Alexandrovich to participate through Zoom next week. So we'll stay on this story and see if he does in fact appear. But look, Nevada's acting US attorney, Sigal Chattah, in an X post had blamed the Clark County District Attorney's Office and state judges for not requiring Alexandrovich to surrender his passport, considering the fact that he's a flight risk. But what's really interesting is, while I definitely think that Sigal Chattah has something to do with the fact that he was able to fly back without having to worry about an arraignment in person, the Clark County District Attorney is saying some stuff that's making me go, So Clark County District Attorney Steve Wolfson has denied allegations that the defendant received special treatment, describing Alexandrovich's bail as standard or preset by the court. Under the standard bail procedure, an arrestee can post bond straight away and be released without conditions, Wolfson explained. Yes, that is the case when it comes to Americans who are not a flight risk. In this case, Alexandrovich is an Israeli national and is a flight risk and should have had his passport taken away, but it wasn't. I think intentionally so. So the judge says that this alleged pervert should have no contact with minors and refrain from using dating sites as this case is adjudicated, which, come on, Cenk. I mean, this is gonna be impossible to enforce considering the fact that he is an Israeli government official currently in Israel and didn't show up in person for his arraignment.
Okay, yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of absurdities here and a lot of open questions. But I think that this is a binary issue. So what happens here is going to be really important from 2 points of view. One is the legal point of view, the other is the media point of view. So let me break it all down. So first of all, to Anna's point, is he a flight risk? Well, there's no bigger flight risk than a foreign government official who's charged with child sex trafficking, right? I mean, just forget Israel. Like any foreign official, have an Afghan, a Swedish guy. It doesn't really matter. He's of course going to go back to his home country. You'd be nuts to not put him in prison, right? I mean, that's the most obvious thing in the world. Like wouldn't it be super weird if the Swedish dude who was looking to rape American kids didn't go back to Sweden and was just like, oh yeah, I'll just stay here in case I go to prison for 20, 30 years because I'd like to help serve justice. No, he's not interested in justice. That's why he was trying to have sex with kids. So, okay, so that's obvious, okay, to anyone who isn't an Israeli defender or all of media, okay?
If you defend Israel, why would you defend this? Genuinely, just at least think strategically for once in your life. If you happen to be an avid supporter of Israel and you will support Israel any at all costs, why would you defend Israel harboring someone who tried to rape kids in the United States?
Yeah.
Don't you care about the reputation of the country you love so much?
Yeah,
it's just so stupid. It's stupid.
There's three different buckets there. Hold on, there's three different buckets there. So a lot of Israeli supporters don't defend him. Okay, to be fair to them, I've seen it online. They're like, who's this guy and why is he doing this? No, that's terrible, right? And then there are the people who say, no, it's anti-Semitic. Wait, hold on, Jesus Christ, how could this be anti-Semitic? Because their knee-jerk reaction is anything that's a criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. And so how did they get there? Because they got to get there somehow, right? The talking point 100% of the time is anti-Semitism. It's just a question of how you get there. In this case, they get there with, oh, well, the rapist of every government would be like, oh, except now people are complaining when Israel's child rapist is like, oh, they're singling out Israel. And they're saying that Israel has special powers in America. Yeah, it's an anti-Semitic trope, okay? But brother, no, there is no other government official would be let go or should be let go. And it's not singling out Israel at all. It would be the reverse to say that no, only Israeli officials should be allowed to go back and not face justice. And that's absurd. I mean, I hope none of you are saying that, but a lot of you are saying that. If you, some of the supporters of Israel, etc. Look, the idea that he shouldn't be brought back is totally indefensible. But yet, what you're gonna see is, and that's why you're seeing the sound of silence here, and that's why the media part of this is super important. But what you're gonna see is that no US government official is actually trying to bring him back. Everyone agrees. Even if you corner an Israeli supporter and go, hey guys, if you love Israel, why would you want it to guys like this to evade justice? Then it looks like Israel's getting special privileges, and then folks are gonna hate Israel. I mean, don't you get that? To Anna's point, that's like, it's pretty dumb not to realize that, right? And nevertheless, some people go, no. Israel can never be charged. No one from Israel could ever be charged. Everyone's an anti-Semite. Okay, look, then we're having a nonsense conversation, okay? So now, the US courts say, okay, you've got to do X, Y, and Z. US courts have no jurisdiction in Israel. He can do whatever the hell he likes. If he goes on dating sites, what are you gonna do about it, US courts? What are you gonna do about it? He's not even in the country. All of this is theater. All of this is absurdity. If our government was not biased in favor of Israel, we would be doing everything to get him back. Instead, here's what we're doing to get him back. Nothing, literally nothing. The judge is confused by it. He's like, I don't get it. I told him to be here in court. Where's the hard part? And now there's confusion partly because one of the papers reporting on it is owned by a massive Israel supporter whose family has given $337 million to Donald Trump and has said publicly it's so that he will support Israel. So now her junk paper is theoretically reporting on this, so you have to ignore everything they say. So look, there's just not enough real reporters in the country. There needs to be a reporter there going, wait. Does he have to show up in person, or are we making special rules for Israeli citizens where they can zoom in? Because, by the way, if I'm one of the defense attorneys for the other 7 guys who were caught, who have the misfortune of being American citizens, and obviously have way less rights than that Israeli government official. I mean, let's be honest, that's what's happening. That is definitively what's happening. So the Americans with less rights, I mean, I would go in and go, wait, why can't I do a Zoom? Why can't I just, you know what? I wanna go to Israel too. Or I wanna go to Australia. Or I wanna go on vacation to Hawaii, whatever. I now want special privileges. Wait a minute, we caught you trying to rape kids. Who cares? If the Israelis allowed, why aren't I allowed? And that's a fair question, because neither one of you should be allowed. None of you should be allowed to do things like this. So Anna, the reason I say it's binary is either this guy is going to face justice or he's not. So all of the excuses that government officials can make, including the one that hates, like literally is a bigot who has publicly announced many times, the district attorney here, that she hates Palestinians. Right?
The state attorney, State
attorney, okay? And so, I mean, it's a joke. Her being involved in this case is a joke. So if she does her job, then no problem at all. But she's like, no, I helped hide the Israeli rapist. I'm from Israel and I hate Palestinians and I should be in charge of this case. And I'm gonna treat the American citizens as 100% harshly, but the Israeli citizen gets to walk. No, then get the hell out of here. You should be fired immediately.
And look, I know you're not saying this, but I just want to give my point of view in regard to the prosecution of pedophiles or child sex predators, whether they're US citizens or disgusting sex tourists from other countries. All of them should be prosecuted as harshly as possible, as harshly as the state laws or federal laws permit. Okay, I don't want, this Israeli is getting special treatment, so I want the American pedophiles to be treated nicely. No, they're preying on kids. And look, this story was really an eye-opener for me, Cenk, because it really does reveal to me how little our government and our media cares about our own kids in our own country. Okay, they couldn't care less. I brought it up on the CNN panel. That was definitely the first time that story was ever mentioned on CNN. And get off it. No one addressed it. No one cares. And that's the thing. Either they don't care or they're terrified. They're terrified to address it. And the real question is why? Is it because he's a cybersecurity official who's been working with our NSA and our intelligence organizations? He's the one who built the so-called security dome that he's pitching to other countries, including the United States, digital security dome. Are they worried that he might try to dig up dirt on them if they report harshly on him? And that's the thing that's so great about you and I, Cenk, okay? Because we live, on screen, it might look like we live exciting lives. I live the life of a grandmother, okay? I go to work, I go home, clean as a whistle. Okay, so I'm gonna hit at him as hard as humanly possible because this is, the pinnacle of gross injustice in our country right now, that he's getting away with this. Anyway.
Yeah, so I have two things to add to that. First of all, I agree, but I'm gonna add a rule, okay? So your rule number one is they should all be treated as harshly as possible. I agree. Rule number two is no American should be treated with less rights and as inferior to the citizens of any other country. So,
agreed.
So the American citizens that are charged with this heinous crime should be treated super harshly, and so should the Israeli citizen. Obvious. Anyone who disagrees with that is weird, maniacal, obviously biased. And it just does, it's telling on yourself. Now, the more important thing is, Anna, because look, we like the Israeli supporters, some of them are against, some are for, whatever, okay? But the bottom line is, what is our American government going to do, okay? We could all have debates online, right? And so if right now mainstream media has a total wall of silence, and yeah, when you said it on CNN, Anna, there was this awkward, eerie silence. And it was, I thought at that moment, it was one of two things. Either they had never heard of it because they never hear anything anti-Israel, because it's never, ever, ever reported in mainstream media. So they might be like, what? What is this? Like, is this conspiratorial or something, right? The idea that Israel would do anything wrong and that the American government would unfairly be biased in favor of Israel. That sounds like a crazy conspiracy theory. So it's possible they never heard it. Or if they heard it, they're like, get off it, get off it, get off it. And that's weird. Both of those things are super weird, because right now it's not like, there's some stories where almost nobody's ever heard of it, right? And then there's a story like this where the grassroots and online media is talking a lot about it. A Republican congressman got challenged about it just recently. That's later in the show, right? So the grassroots is bubbling up, and online media is like, nope, no one should talk about it. No one will talk about it. Well, why? That's weird. There's a giant controversy that's bubbling up. Normally you would cover it, but in this case you're not. So the pro-Israel stance of American media is, best case scenario, super duper weird. I mean, look, you were on CNN, you challenged Israel, what I thought was fairly mildly, right? And they seemed like aghast, like their mind was blown. They're like, oh, what do you mean? We already condemned Hamas. We're done with this topic.
Well,
like, Jesus Christ.
I want to be fair. Look, I don't think that Abby Phillips falls under that category. I think that she tones it down in my opinion, but I get the sense that she sees what's going on just based on the comments she does make. There was one person on that panel. I'm not talking about
Abby, okay? Yeah, and I hear you on that, and I'm not.
But Scott Jennings, okay? I mean, hardcore. Apparently, he's definitely a huge Israel supporter, defends Israel at any at all costs, and has never been confronted with the kinds of arguments that I was making. Those are the kinds of circles he runs around with.
No,
so
Scott
when
Jennings.
I bring up the hostages, or when he brings up the hostages and I say, okay, well, what about the West Bank? There's no hostages in the West Bank, so why is Israel raining terror on the Palestinians in the West Bank? He goes back to, I want the hostages released. Loser. Yeah. That's a loser argument.
No. I saw Scott Jennings. Look, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So you're bringing up perfectly legitimate points. Not only that, you're backing them up with evidence that you're citing, statistics and facts that you're citing. And this is Scott Jennings' reaction the whole time. Oh yeah, whatever. I already said Hamas. I win the argument. Israel. Are you saying Israel's not a saint? Oh, cancel her. That's what you look like, Scott Jennings. And you look like a stupid stooge for Israel. You look like you're like a desperate little, like he's got like his fancy clothes and things. And he's like, oh yeah, I already said Hamas. I'm running for Senate later. Send me money, AIPAC. Who cares? Israel murdered 62,000 people. The 83% of them are civilians. 18,000 at a bare minimum are children. Who cares? It's just Palestinians. Here in Washington, we don't care about human beings. All we care about is money. That's what Scott Jennings looks like. He looked like a despicable genocide supporter, which is exactly what he is.
Yeah, and don't make the mistake of thinking he cares about American kids either. All right, we gotta go to break. But when we come back, there's a lot more to get to, because if you think Scott Jennings looked bad, wait till you get a load of Democratic Congressman Ritchie Torres in an interview where he just looks like a monster. He really does. We've got that and more coming up. Don't miss it.
All right, I'm gonna have to read a lot of these blind, but so let's go to our members on TYT.com. Navinik says, breaking points to the segment praising Anna kicking ass on CNN. That's great, we appreciate that. Breaking Points has done some terrific segments lately. Pessimistic Progressive says, notice how Democrats talk about the Minneapolis killing of kids versus the killing of kids in Gaza. Dems receive $0 from the NRA, but millions from AIPAC. Don't tell me money in politics doesn't affect these people. Well, the only people who would tell you that money in politics doesn't affect people are utter, like ludicrous morons, otherwise known as almost everyone in mainstream media. But no one else, literally no one else believes that. You'd have to be like bottom 0.01% in intelligence to think millions of dollars giving to a politician doesn't affect them. You would have to be so stupid as to be a national media reporter to believe that. No one else on planet Earth believes it. Then it's a great point. You're like, oh, we don't take money from NRA anymore. I can't believe these kids were killed. Oh, we're taking endless money from AIPAC. Oh, 18,000 kids killed, who cares? Who cares? You sound like an anti-Semite. Give me the money, give me the money. Yeah.
Okay, Cenk, this is amazing. I just saw this, someone sent it to me. Thank you to the person who sent it to me. So apparently, obviously, like Israel wants to bomb every square inch of Gaza to smithereens, including areas where Gazan Christians are at. And so the Washington-based Jewish Policy Center says, important to understand, if Gaza Christians believe Israel will not conduct its war in Gaza City, they are mistaken. They have implanted themselves in a battlefield. They are part of the battle. If they are looking for martyrdom, well, essentially threatening to kill Christians. I mean, Judeo-Christian values, am I right? Oh my God, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, that's absolute. Look, guys, this isn't about race, religion, or anything like that. It's power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And we have our corrupt, crooked politicians have given Israel, and by the way, tons of corporate donors, absolute power. Like the drug companies, they have absolute power to set any price they like because they bribed almost everyone in Congress. But the moronic mainstream media reporters are like, what's a drug company? What's big pharma? Oh, when they vote to say you can't negotiate prices, that has to do with the money they're taking? I'm not gonna write that. I'm gonna write they had a debate and the drug companies won the debate. They're so stupid, as you can tell. I'm livid about dumb reporters today. Okay, Guam will capsize dragon says, there's so many pedos that they're distracting us from the other pedos. Winter Scoop says, my cousin was arrested for a sex crime he didn't do. His bail was $250,000. This Israeli government official's bail was not normal. No bail. If you're an Israeli citizen, walk. You get on a plane. Man, I don't know if we bought the ticket for him. I don't know if he had security escort him. Oh, we've got an Israeli official here. Everybody clear out. You Americans are worthless. Clear out. The Israeli pedophile has to get back home to safety. So Jesus Christ. Salt of the Union says, I'm surprised he even got a lawyer. Why even pretend like you're subjected to the law? Because they have to do pretenses and then they have to say, oh, like, yeah, of course he's innocent. Why is he innocent? Hamas. Hamas did it. They're gonna say, like, you think they won't say it? There's only two answers that Israeli supporters have for anything. Hamas, and you're an anti-Semite, period. They don't need to think of anything else because that's enough. Because then a dumb reporter goes, oh, you're an anti-Semite, Hamas.
Amazing.
Okay, we gotta do this fast.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Anna's got more news.
Let's get right to it.
The fact that I still
care about being Jewish is embarrassing. I should just be a guy. But this feels like a stain on our history. And it feels like it's changed what being Jewish is. Because what being Jewish is isn't Israel. Judaism has existed for 4,000 years. This is a country for 75 years. People in my life are gonna be mad at me about this, but I'm saying this because I am Jewish.
I feel like I'm here to be lectured, not.
Shut up. That's not nice. You can't talk that way.
Turns out one of the biggest mistakes comedian Adam Friedland can possibly make is try to reach the humanity that doesn't actually exist in Democratic Congressman Ritchie Torres' heart as they were discussing the barbarism, the genocide, and the ethnic cleansing that's currently taking place in both Gaza and the West Bank. Ritchie Torres had absolutely no empathy, even as he was speaking to a host who happens to be Jewish. So this might have something to do with it. Let's put this graphic up, which shows you just how much money this New York congressman has received from the Israel lobby, nearly $1.6 million in his pretty short political career, to be quite frank. So with that in mind, let's just go to this interview, which spanned a variety of topics. I should be clear, they didn't just talk about what Israel is up to, but I'm gonna focus on the issues pertaining to anti-Semitism and the genocide in Gaza. So here's Friedland basically explaining how he believes that anti-Semitism is rising in the United States, not because people are just hateful, but due to Israel's actions against the Palestinians. Take a look.
I think hatred of Jewish people has exploded in this country. And I think it's because it's of our support of what looks to be an absolute brutality. And I think that
you think that's a justification for anti-Semitism?
Here's the thing:
you think Israeli government policy is a justification for anti-Semitism? My view is there's no justification for anti-Semitism.
I think that
there's zero justification for anti-Semitism.
Okay, you're deflecting again.
I'm not deflecting. That's my position.
What does it look like to have a flag with a Jewish star and I'm Jewish, and for kids to be starving right now? Why is my government? I don't want to do this fight. Let's not do like a yelling at each other thing. I really just, for me, I had the experience of.
It just sounds like you're justifying anti-Semitism, which making me feel like.
Are you crazy right now?
Okay.
Why would I do that? You're doing the I'm Hamas thing?
I mean, there's really no way around it. Ritchie Torres is just a bad person. He's a bad guy, okay? And honestly, the one doing the lecturing here is the non-Jew, okay? Telling the Jewish host how he should feel about the fact that every single time you see images and videos of Israel's barbarism toward literal children, the response to anyone who's concerned about it is, oh, that's anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
That's anti-Semitic. It's anti-Semitic to be concerned about innocent children being butchered by a government. Yeah. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so look, I just want to break down that really dumb talking point of Ritchie Torres. So, it sounds like you're justifying anti-Semitism. Okay, so after 9/11, as a Muslim American, I could have said, okay, that's it, you're not allowed to talk about 9/11. Why? Because that's riling up hatred towards Muslims. That's, you're encouraging Islamophobia. And that would have been mental because 9/11 did happen and people were going to talk about it. Right? Now, that doesn't mean that 9/11 happened, so hence you should hate Muslims. No, but do I understand why people mistakenly ascribe that to all Muslims? Of course I do, because I'm not a moron or pretending to be a moron for money like Ritchie Torres. I know that after 9/11, a lot of people were going to be super pissed at Muslims. And then your job is to say, hey, not all Muslims, etc., get them to rational, but then not to defend the people who did it, but to go after the people who did it. But if you say, no, if we go after the people who did 9/11, that would be Islamophobic. And in this case, there's Ritchie Torres is saying, if you're gonna try to stop Israel, and not violently, not anything, just can we not fund? Can we not proactively finance their genocide? He's like, well, if you're complaining about the genocide, then that means you're an anti-Semite. Yeah. Okay, yeah. And so that's what $1.6 million will buy you, an idiot propagandists like Ritchie Torres.
Soulless. That's what really stood out to me about Ritchie Torres in the context of this interview. So, as the back and forth on this topic continued, Friedland, I thought this was an important moment, explained how he himself used to identify as a Zionist, and then he ended up living in Israel and experienced some things that enlightened him. Take a look.
I lived there.
I don't intend to be mean, so.
Sir, I lived there when I was 18, and I grew up a Zionist. And we were told, and our whole community in this country is told, that we have to defend Israel and love Israel because it'll stop the Holocaust. It will stop another Holocaust from happening. And my dad was born in 1951. That was 6 years after these atrocities. His friends' parents, he knew these people that had been through this hell, these skeletons. And it terrified us. And the understanding in our community is that we have to defend Israel. But I lived there, and I went to a settlement at the end of my year there, and I looked down the hill at a Palestinian village, and I saw how they lived, and I turned back and I looked at the settlement and saw how they lived. And people live in a world where they're demeaned and dehumanized and surveilled constantly by people and this isn't in Gaza, by people in SWAT team outfits with semi-automatic weapons, and that's what the world is seeing.
See, this is why I can't stand Israel defenders, just defaming the entirety of the Jewish population by saying that what's happening right now in Gaza is being done on behalf of the Jewish population, in the name of the Jewish population, because it's not. It's not about the Jewish people at all. I mean, I listen to Friedland there and what he's saying, and this is a man with a heart and a soul, and he knows that there's injustice and he's speaking out against it. So to do what Netanyahu and the IDF is doing in the name of Jewish people overall is one of the most disgusting and defamatory things I have seen in modern history.
Yeah, so this is a perfect example of how it's not about religion, it's about a government, right? Because you have a Jewish person saying, I don't want anybody to do this in my name, and he's being a wonderful, decent, moral person. And you have a person who is representing Israel who is not Jewish, saying, no, Israel should get to kill all these people, and the people who are being killed are guilty, and the people doing the killing are not guilty, right? And so why is he saying that? Is he saying that to protect Jews? No, as Adam is pointing out, no, he's actually putting Jews in greater danger. And one of the reasons that he's putting them in greater danger is because he's saying, if you criticize the monstrous actions of Israel, that means you hate Jews. An attack on Israel is an attack on all Jews. All Jews are then responsible for all of Israel's actions. But that's nuts, because no one in the Israeli cabinet called any of my Jewish friends or family. They didn't. It's not true. They're just using Jews as human shields. So no, you can't, if you criticize Israel, that means you criticize. Okay, then again, back to 9/11. It's so, can you imagine? Israel's doing something terrible, Al-Qaeda did something terrible. And by the way, Israel has so far killed 20 times the number of people Al-Qaeda killed on 9/11. You want to catch feelings about, oh my God, you can't compare them, I just did, okay? And if you kill 20 times the number of people as Al-Qaeda, you probably should be looking at yourself as what's wrong with you, as opposed to, how dare you compare me to Al-Qaeda when I am the great and holy Israel. You're not, you're a sick government in the middle of a genocide. So if somebody made the audacious and preposterous argument that you cannot criticize Al-Qaeda because they represent all Muslims, that would hurt the Muslim community. And I would speak out super forcefully and say, no, they don't represent all Muslims. Are you insane? We're not in favor of that kind of terrorism. But here people are saying, no, the non-Jew is telling the Jew, hey, you know what? Israel represents all of you, and you're all responsible for Israel's actions. He's like, no, I'm not, I'm against it. He's like, shut up, Jewish person, I'm telling you what's right. It's insane, it's ludicrous.
Yeah, it is. So finally, despite the fact that Friedland explained what his own personal experiences in Israel happened to be, Ritchie Torres basically took it, threw it in the trash. And even after the interview was technically over, they still engaged in a bit of a back and forth. The cameras were still rolling. And while it was awkward, I think it's worth taking a look at it.
We could have talked about so much other.
No, I think you had an agenda to speak about this. I really do.
didn't have an agenda.
I really did.
It's your number one topic.
It's not my number one topic. It's just not.
It is.
It's not my number one topic. It's not my
what I
number
saw.
Well, then
from
I'm
what
happy
I saw, from what
I was not elected on Israel. You don't get elected in the South Bronx and
I'm
Northeast
not
Bronx.
trying to make you feel bad or like.
No, but I just don't think you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't think you know what you're talking about, Ritchie. Okay, you are the one who's literally paid to say and spew the bile that comes out of your mouth.
Yeah.
And for him to lecture Friedland, it's disgusting. I feel bad because you could tell Friedland was really thinking that they could have like a real exchange here, but you can't really have a genuine exchange, a sincere conversation with a robot, with an empty suit, with someone who's just, I don't know, soulless. I look at Ritchie Torres and I see soulless. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so last couple of things here. This is old school versus new school too. So the new school is, I don't care that I'm from Turkey. Adam doesn't care that he lived in Israel. We're all just trying to do the right thing, right? So if the Turkish president is, attacking democracy, which he is, we call him out. Why? Because we're Americans. And we got no dog in that fight. And our job is in news is to be unbiased. Adam's doing the same thing for Israel. You know why? Because he's an American. And so that's why we protect our Jewish American brothers and sisters and do not make the mistake Ritchie Torres wants you to make and AIPAC wants you to make and assume that all Jews agree with the heinous actions of Israel. But so why does Ritchie Torres care about that? Because he woke up he woke up in the Bronx and he's like, oh God, Israel, I'm just dying to protect Israel no matter what. Even if they do a genocide, I can't wait to support them. No, it's because he's corrupt and he got paid $1.6 million. So the core of this issue isn't even Israel, it's money in politics. Because Ritchie Torres will do anything for money. So if you think he's not selling out to the drug companies, the oil companies, and all those, he sells out to everyone. And if anyone else gave him if Sweden gave him 1.6 million, Botswana gave him $1.6 million, he'd be like, oh, of course, the great people of Sweden, and anybody, they should be allowed to murder anyone they like. And if you are criticize them, you're anti-Swedish. Okay, he would say it. Of course, he would say it. He gets paid to represent his donors and not his voters. And finally, that leads to the Bronx comment. He's like, oh, the Bronx is not really an issue in Israel. I'm not doing this to win. No, of course it's not an issue in Israel, in the Bronx. But why do you keep talking about it nonstop? You're one of the top congressmen to constantly talk about Israel, okay? And how does it help you win an election? Not by getting voters, you know how it helps you, by getting the money, Lebowski. And so the money comes in and you use that money to lie to your voters, to trick them into voting for you. You never talk about Israel because your voters wouldn't like that. Instead, you tell them other lies that you bought with the AIPAC money. So no, look, Adam did a nice job trying to interview this corporate sellout, but the reality is there's no talking to these people. Not only are they robots, Anna, on top of that, they're so corrupt, you can't have an honest conversation. Because an honest conversation is, you're doing it for the money. And then he'd be like, oh, no way, man, I just love Israel's genocide. Okay, whatever, he's useless. But by the way, remember, Ritchie Torres is not like some exception to the rule. He is the rule. That is the great majority of our congressmen. They don't care about Jewish people, they don't care about religion, they don't care about their voters. All they care about is, where's the money? And I will be a prostitute for anyone who pays me. So that is how Ritchie Torres is very symbolic of the US Congress. Okay.
All right, well, Cenk is about to interview a different Democratic congresswoman who might think a little differently from Ritchie Torres, so stay tuned for that.
I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken when I first got my license, like 17 years old or 17, 18, whatever it was. And I'm driving, I think my dad's Oldsmobile. And I parked it in a place where there was two cars next to me, really tight spot, and a car behind me. I don't even know how I got in there because I'm a terrible driver. Back then I was an even worse driver. And on the roads I'm okay, but in parking spots, I have terrible spatial reasoning and I'm a mess. And on my way out, I hit all three cars at once. I broke all records, okay? So I went, as I'm backing out, I went boom, oh, and this side hit that car, this side hit this car, and the back hit the third car. Okay? And I got stuck. I didn't know how to get out. Like I went, okay, for this, and then I'm like, no, and then, right? And then finally I had to stop, go inside the KFC and go, I'm sorry, I hit a bunch of your cars. They're like, what do you mean a bunch of your cars? I'm like, I don't know.
Wow, there's a B?
Yeah, I'm like this, I hit 3 cars. I don't know, so you guys gotta come help me, okay? Okay, so one, my bad, really sorry about that. Okay, number 2, can someone take my car out? Because I don't wanna keep hitting your cars, and I'm incapable of taking it out of this spot.
Now baby, move that fat, baby, move that fat. Out.
Hi, I'm Brett Ehrlich with Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. Hi, Brett Ehrlich here. According to EPA head Scott Pruitt, climate change is not happening. He cited a meme on Facebook he saw. When pressed to back up this source, he said it must be accurate because the watermark said it was made by a scientist. So, your move, Truth.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT, TYT.
The place is like 95% TYT on.
You guys, the Young Turks, which is my favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Tank and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
All the people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think one side seems to be winning. They seem to have a bigger army. There might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
All right, back on TYT, we've got a great interview for you now.
Decir unas palabras en español porque yo soy guatemalteca con mucho orgullo, primero que soy americana.
All right, Congresswoman Delia Ramirez joins us now. She's from Illinois. She's just Democrat. Congresswoman, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. So we've got a lot of things to talk about, including the Democrats' action plan, if they have one. But MAGA is apparently calling for you to be deported over the comments that we just showed. And we want to give you a chance to respond.
I think MAGA is trying to do whatever they can to try to distract us from the reality. We're just weeks from a government shutdown, Epstein files, and a subpoena that was approved in Oversight Committee. And the reality, let's just be honest, Jack, they hate diversity. They hate that I stand up for immigrants, and I'm unapologetic about it. But to say that I'm a proud Guatemalan American and that's committing treason, it's hypocrisy. And it's an attack, hoping that I'll stay quiet. It actually just amplifies me more.
Yeah, so I'm curious. Right now, obviously, Donald Trump is putting military in the streets, kidnapping people off the streets with masked men with no badges, etc. And we've been completely against that at the Young Turks. So it gets a little bit more interesting when you get to the issues of border security. So it appears that they have, quote unquote, closed the border, whatever that means, as opposed to Biden administration, where the border was seemingly more open. Do you think that assessment is wrong, or do you agree with that assessment and think maybe Democrats did do some things wrong?
Look, I'm a Democrat, and for those that know me know that I'm also not afraid in criticizing when Democrats get things wrong. I think that for a very long time, we as Democrats have done a terrible job talking about immigration and separating the conversation about immigration, what's happening here, the root causes of migration, and what happens at the border. But Jack, I was at the border a couple months ago. I would tell you that I saw a 12-year-old boy who's handcuffed for attempting to come to this country seeking refuge, handcuffed, a 12-year-old. I also heard the officers talk about how, yeah, people are not really coming through the border anymore, but some people that are attempting to come through this wall that they just built are dying as they're jumping through. So yes, Republicans have shut down the border. They're making it more dangerous for people, but it doesn't change the circumstances, Jack, that force people to leave their country. It just means more people are dying.
So just one more thing on that. I'm for legal immigration. Obviously, I would prefer that people do it the legal way, right? So when people do it in a way that is, outside of that, it presents a challenge. So, and why is it a challenge? Well, you could say easy, just bring them back, right? But sometimes they have asylum cases, and you got to hear that, and so that's why I would say, hey, more judges, etc. But what do you do with that 12-year-old? So if that 12-year-old came by himself or with a family, we can't just say, okay, welcome to the country. We also don't want to be cruel to the 12-year-old or the family. So what do we do instead?
Well, I think, Jack, I'm for legal immigration too. I think that everyone that's crossing borders having to spend $10,000 nearly dying, that Aaron Gap would tell you, if there was an opportunity to file for status to come to this country legally, they would desperately do that, sell anything if they had anything to be able to do that, and they'd prefer to give it to the United States than they would to give it to a coyote or someone who falsely promises them an opportunity in this country. The point, though, is that we haven't really established real legal pathways for poor people. We've done it, and Donald Trump talks about this golden pass, right? This golden card for anyone that can pay $5 million. Well, the people crossing that border weren't the people that had 5 million. I think when we think about this country, we're a country that says through our Statue of Liberty, give me, you're hungry, you're weary, you're tired. If that 12-year-old boy came by himself, the very first thing we should be asking ourselves is, let's do a wellness check on this child. Is he okay? Does he need medicine? Does he need a doctor? Why did he come by himself? Where is his family? And then figure out, as we do with any other child, what does child welfare look like while we assess if this child is able to be returned or reconnected with family, or if this child is someone that is seeking asylum and needs to find an adoptive family or a foster or a sponsor here in this country. But Jen, this other thing that I talk about often is we haven't done anything about immigration reform in this country since 1986. The Latinos that I hear from that said, well, I voted for Trump because I voted for Trump because Ronald Reagan, a Republican, gave me status. That's in people's mind. We haven't done anything in almost 40 years, Democrats or Republicans. So it's just a compounded, broken system that has brought us to this moment.
Yep. All right, so let's talk about what actions Democrats can take in the era of Trump. And here I'm not just talking about immigration, I'm talking about broadly. So, Donald Trump is doing a lot of things that are very aggressive that we don't agree with, et cetera. So what do you think is the best way to fight back for the Democratic Party?
I think the very first, Frank, we got to stop seeing ourselves as a minority party and as an opposition party. And I've said this since November of last year. In so many countries where there is a fascist government, what other parties see themselves as the opposition party. The party that is going to do everything they can and use every tool possible to obstruct that authoritarian government from getting away with robbing democracy in that country. And so I think for Democrats, we have to ask ourselves and look at ourselves in the mirror, frankly and honestly, and ask ourselves, are you using every single authority you have to block bills when needed, to force negotiations, to visit, for example, an immigration? Go check on detention centers. Just because no one told you to send an email doesn't mean you don't have congressional oversight. Show up, go to immigration court like I did yesterday. You know, make sure that we're not just giving these suspension bills, Jen. Every Monday or Tuesday, when we come back, we go back literally next week on Tuesday, there are bills that require 2/3 of members to vote on. Why the hell are we voting on those without saying, we'll vote on those bills when we talk about appropriation? The point that I'm making is, Jen, that we need to show the American people that we're doing everything in our power to fight back. And just saying, well, we're the minority party, we're gonna wait till November of 26, it's not enough. People are terrorized right now, and they're worried that they might not even have a free and fair election come November 26.
Do you think Democratic leadership is doing enough?
I think Democratic leadership is really stepping up and doing a lot more. But I would tell you as someone that yes, I'm still going to tell you that I have family who came to this country 35 years ago and still attempting to be able to regulate status and lives in the shadow, that people on the ground do not feel like we're doing enough. There is much more to do. I told those suspension bills, I think we should be doing all sorts of shadow hearings. Now we're calling them congressional oversight forums. We should be filing more lawsuits. Members of Congress don't usually file lawsuits. There's one right now active. We should be using every litigation opportunity possible, because in the courts, that's the place where we're seeing a little bit of that challenge and some of that co-equal branch of government in effect that honestly I'm not seeing in Congress.
What do you think are the top issues that the Democrats should focus on?
John, the economy, I would say, is number one. It should have been number one. It's always number one. People are asking themselves, how the heck am I going to ever put a down payment on that little house I promised my family and pay for the groceries and put that boy through college? The reality is that it is too darn expensive to be able to purchase a home. The groceries, I just went today because I'm one of those that actually goes to Aldi myself, $162 at Aldi, and I didn't buy meat. So we have to have the conversations about what Donald Trump promised when he got sworn in and the reality of this moment, that our lives are not better since he got into office. Tariff wars have only created the destabilization. But the other thing is, young people are literally living in fear. I have United States citizens who call my office and ask, how can they get a second passport if they lose the passport they have? Because they now walk around with the passport out of fear that some person with a mask will say their eyes and detain them and deport them without due process. So how do we protect the democracy? How do we protect people on the ground? And how do we address the issues of economy?
Yeah, we're talking to US Congresswoman Delia Ramirez from Illinois. And so far we've, and you're very right about that. We covered a story here about several different women in different states who've been raped by masked men pretending to be ICE agents. And you can't tell them apart from ICE agents because ICE agents are also masked and also don't show badges. So it's scary stuff. Now, we've talked about defense so far against Trump's abuses. How about offense? Is there anything that the Democratic Party should be pushing now in terms of policy to say, this is what we stand for?
I think, Jen, that's a really good point, because every town hall I go to, people say, I think I kind of know what you're fighting against. Tell me what you're going to fight for. And it can't just be that you're fighting for us to win the election come November 26th. That doesn't pay the bills. So I think that this is a moment for us to really have a deep conversation about money and politics, for example, Jen. The reality is that the healthcare is too darn expensive and not accessible because insurance companies and pharma has way too much influence in the capital. The reality is that we're not actually addressing the issues of housing because developers and realtors have too much influence when it comes to DC. When we're talking about shared humanity and peace, let's be honest. AIPAC has a lot of control over Democrats and Republicans. So I would say to you that there are some things that we could be talking about just right now that we're going to take a stand on, and money in politics would be one of those. I'm one of 65 members of Congress that doesn't take corporate PAC contributions. If we want to show people that we are the party of the working class, then none of us should be taking corporate PAC contributions. So I think that we should be calling out these super PACs that have such influence over the elections.
So, I mean, that's music to my ears, of course. When I was one of the co-founders of Just Democrats, I'm one of the folks who came up with the no corporate PAC money rule. And I love that it's now up to 65 people in Congress. And it means that you're more honest because otherwise you're representing the donor class and not the voters. Now, having said all that, the issue there is, in my opinion, most of the Democratic members of Congress and almost all of the Republican members of Congress are not honest. They are representing their donors. They are representing AIPAC. They are representing oil companies, drug companies, etc. So how do you deal with the fact that most of your party is corrupt? And if you said it, I'm sure you won't say it here, because if you said it here, you would be in a lot of trouble and there would be consequences. But if you don't say it, then you can't ever fix it. So how do you solve that unsolvable riddle?
I think I would step back and say, what do we care most about? Do we actually want to see Medicare for all pass? We have, 200 sponsors right now? And you hear people talk about this all the time. They're putting off that medical test because they have to choose between paying their mortgage or the rent or going to get a test that might save their life. All of these things that we say we care about, whether it's healthcare, housing, education, diversity, democracy, it is all bound by money and politics. And I think that spending more time defending ourselves and saying that we're not elitist doesn't make us less elitist. Showing up, meeting people where they are, recognizing that things are not where they need to be and that perhaps we made promises we did not fulfill, it's the first step that we get there. And I think that this is a time, and Jack, yeah, sometimes I do hear it from my own party that I'm just being too vocal about it, but we need more authentic leaders in this moment. Like, part of the reason that we are where we are is not just that people voted for Trump. People didn't vote, period. People felt like it doesn't make a difference. While some of us were screaming, how could you possibly think it doesn't make a difference? They're not the same candidates, right? But this is a moment where we have to ask ourselves, what do we stand for? How are we so different from the others? And how do we take on corruption, even when it means we have to take it on from the inside?
Well, so that, okay, one more tactical or strategic question there then, because you and I have, it seems, the same goals, right? Get money out of politics, pass these policies Democrats have that actually serves the average person. I'm, as cynical as you sound a little bit here in terms of your experience in Congress. Multiply it by 200 for me. So I don't think your Democratic colleagues are honest at all. I think that the 200 co-sponsors for Medicare for All are illusory. I think that, and I know that because Tim Ryan, for example, was a co-sponsor of Medicare for All. When he was running for president, I asked him, are you for Medicare for All? He said, no. I said, why are you a co-sponsor? And it's just politics. They're gonna do what their donors want them to do, right? So that's all in prelude to asking you, okay, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with, like, so for example, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tom Massey, and others on the Republican side, for all of their foibles and all of their things that I massively disagree with, at least have the courage to say, yeah, no, I think our leadership is wrong. I think we need to have this fight within the Republican Party, and I think we need to clarify what the Republican Party is about. On the Democratic side, if you do that, they'll take your head off. But they won't do it. They'll have the corrupt mainstream media attack you and try to find scandals in your life and do a pile-on, right? And so they work in nefarious ways, and you're not really allowed to criticize them. So like my question to you is, shouldn't there be a more forceful fight within the Democratic Party and say, no, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer do not represent us. These guys are working for all their donors, including AIPAC, and I don't agree with them, and I think that they're doing great damage to the Democratic Party. What happens if somebody says that? Because apparently you can't say that because even the best congresspeople don't say it, even though it's, to me, is super obvious, and to our viewers, it's super obvious.
Cenk, I think I come from organizing, and I actually think that we should have more organizers in Congress because you have to understand how to organize people and organize resources. And while you may not hear me directly say that in every speech or every moment that I'm at a door, I am doing work and pushing back into our leadership and saying we need to do better. We need to call out AIPAC. Leader Jeffries knows that I have said this to him on a number of occasions. So has a number of leaders from the Congressional Progressive Caucus, that we can't pick and choose which members we're protecting because some are more moderate than the others. But the reality is that, yeah, there is a lot of corruption in Congress, absolutely. But I also have to push back on you, Cenk, because there are some people that I work with that I see that they are emotionally committed to this work. They take on the heat, both from Democrats and from the trolls onto the right side. We are constantly living through death threats that are pushing the fold and are not going to stop. I think that maybe 3-4 years ago, that may have been 3 or 4. We may be 8 or 9 now. The point is we have to keep growing that number. And while you may not always see the pushback and agitation we're doing, there's agitation that's public and there's agitation on the inside. And I think we need to be doing both of them.
Yeah, no, I believe there's 8 or 9. There might even be more. There's just, yeah, that leaves 200 other Democrats though. So it's the math on that is not great. So last thing, so do you believe that we should cut all funding to Israel?
I do. Cenk, I have a bill that blocks the bombs, that is offensive bombs, but personally, I think that what Israel is doing is indefensible. And sending one more dollar there is being complicit to what you are seeing that is happening every single day in Gaza and the West Bank. I think enough is enough. And you can't pick and choose what seems to be right in this moment when there is a genocide happening right now in Gaza, and we are funding it.
All right, that is very clear. All right, Representative Delia Ramirez, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate the honest conversation, and thank you for not taking corporate PAC money, because that, of course, gives us a lot more faith in our representatives. All right, hope to see you again soon.
Thanks.
All right, guys, we'll be right back.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one. Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
Ring the bell on YouTube today. You know what it does? It actually rings the bell at my house. It's super annoying, but if you do it, it just keeps on ringing. Oh, plus you can find out when the show is live and whenever we have new clips. Ring the bell. Oh no, not again.
How would I look walking a dog on the White House lawn? Would that be?
You know how much it costs you to start an account on tyt.com? Nothing. It's free. So you just go and register in about 2.5 seconds. Then you can chat with us during the show. We read those comments the most often. You chat with each other. Tons of people have become friends there. We're super interactive. We do a lot of polls for our paying members. We sometimes do polls that drive the direction of the show. So that's amazing. There's no other show that's this interactive. And our home base for that is tyt.com. Come join us right now.
When you were growing up, what did you want to be?
I think I was starting to think I don't want to do one thing, and I did live up to that.
Well, mission accomplished then, because Dave was a geologist, and now he's helped found the Young Turks. Even within TYT, you've done a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So if you want to do different things, you nailed it. All right, last story to end on is a Dave story. Whenever there was something like obvious, glaring, he would go up and ask them about it. Like it'd be like a giant church, right? And somebody's standing in front of it. The usual Dave go, pull up right in front of them. Be like, hey, do you know where there's a church around here? And they're like, right here. It's right here.
Practical jokes. Spice up life a little.
We've been around for about 20 years and we have about 20 billion views. Am I proud of that? Hell yeah, I am. We put out 20 billion messages in a bottle. Have we helped to move now 2 generations, millennials and Gen Z, to become progressive? Yes, those numbers are real. We moved generations. Were we the only ones? Of course not. But we have been the largest online news show for now decades.
Cool news, ShopTYT.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
Gay nutcracker.
Back on the Young Turks, Cenk, Anna, Kevin, Edward, Devlin, and Aaron Cantor. Thank you guys for joining. We appreciate it. You could join through the button below the video on YouTube or tyt.com/, you'll never guess, join. Yes, tyt.com/join. All right, Anna, what's next?
Well, the effort to do mass surveillance of the American people is fully underway. Take a look at this.
I am now about to launch Gideon, America's first ever AI threat detection platform built specifically for law enforcement. It scrapes the internet 24/7 using an Israeli-grade ontology.
Wow, nothing sounds better than Israeli grade, but the person you just heard from is Israeli special ops veteran Aaron Cohen. Oh, they have special ops, that's interesting. Who plans to launch a mass monitoring of Americans through his AI-powered surveillance system. Isn't that great? Now, he's selling this as a way of preventing mass shootings like the one that just happened in Minnesota, obviously tragic. But if I remember correctly, mass surveillance of the American people hasn't really foiled mass shooters in the past. I don't know how using Israeli technology, the Israelis who like to spy on the American people, how is using their technology to do mass surveillance of the American people a good thing? But since this is described as Israeli grade, Fox News anchors are absolutely giddy about it, even though they would probably be condemning it if, say, a country like China were the one pitching their software to do mass surveillance on Americans on their show. Now, let's get to the rest of Cohen's speech, and then I want to hear your thoughts, Jake.
It scrapes the internet 24/7 using an Israeli-grade ontology to pull specific threat language and then routes it to local law enforcement. It's a 24/7 detective. It never sleeps, and it's going to get us in front of these attacks.
Would it have picked up on this, do you think?
100%. I wish my program would already be up. We're not launching until next week. I've got a dozen agencies on board, Trace. I just unloaded a major Northeast agency with over 2,700 sworn. This is America's early warning system.
Okay, I have no doubt that this is going to be deployed in an effort to come down hard on any American who's critical of Israel. I think that's the number one thing that they're gonna focus on here. I don't think this guy cares at all about Americans getting slaughtered in mass shootings. But the name of this program is Gideon. I just want to give you a few details. In an ad for Gideon, this is a screenshot from it. And so Gideon scans incoming signals across, as you can see, open web, and they list Reddit threads, public forums, blog posts, conspiracy boards, and anything that questions Israel, of course, is considered a conspiracy these days. They also go through the comment sections. Other things they go through, social media, of course. If you're a gamer, and you're messaging through the games that you're playing with others, that's gonna be scanned by this. And the indicator patterns they're looking for is grievance buildup, martyrdom language, hate speech plus ideology, tactical prep, target references, suicidal intent, and final post behaviors. A lot of these mass shooters will, post something about how it's the end for them or whatever it is before they carry out their, disgusting violent acts that slaughter others before they take their own lives. But Cenk, do you have any faith in this mass surveillance that's being pitched to us, Israeli grade surveillance?
First of all, I agree with Benjamin Franklin. He said those who would give up essential liberty to purchase little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And by the way, they won't get either and instead what they'll get is Big Brother. So I'm thinking of buying a "Don't Tread on Me" flag. And I probably could get it cheap off of a right-winger these days because they're like, oh yeah, tread on us. Yeah, military in the streets, I love it. Mass surveillance from Israel on American citizens, I love it. Please, please. So here, I'll give you $1. You give me your "Don't Tread on Me" flag, okay? Obviously, you're not using it anymore. So now, to be fair, some of the Trump supporters are not in favor of getting surveilled by anyone, let alone our government or Israeli government. So the fact that he said it's Israeli grade is a code, not for the viewers. The viewers aren't like, oh great, we're gonna have something like the Israelis had when they gave people technology like pagers and said, don't worry, trust this, and then they blew them up and killed them with their kids. That's so great, I can't wait for that to come here, right? But in DC, they do think that. They're like, oh yes, Israeli grade. This way we could do what they did in Gaza here. Oh, right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Gaza is a bit of a test run. And I don't mean for Israel and Israeli control. I mean for the powerful in this world overall against the powerless. What can we do? What can we get away with? How can we control them? Can we control them completely? And then have the whole world go, yes, sir, slaughter anyone you like, sir. Surveil anyone you like, sir. We won't object, we won't object. Why? Part of the reason they won't object is because they were already surveilled. Jeffrey Epstein. So no, this is an epic disaster for America.
Well, in case you're hoping for some nightmares tonight, why don't we go to the next clip featuring Cohen describing Gideon in a video from this past June.
This is Palantir for the homeland, for US law enforcement.
Giddy. What? Why? Okay, so let's talk about Palantir, okay? Because look, let me just be clear about something. So this, there was a deep dive by Wired into Palantir, which does not technically provide new data to its clients about the people that are being surveilled. What they do instead is serve as a tool to rapidly sort through the data that their client already has access to. So anything that you post online, basically, the Palantir technology has a way to basically process it and put it in a nice little package for the government or anyone who's trying to make sense of who they're surveilling, right? So in the case of government and law enforcement clients, there's a lot of data to work with. So here is an excerpt, or a few excerpts actually, from a Wired piece kind of breaking it down. In just minutes, a law enforcement official or government analyst can map out who may be in a person's network and see documents that link them together. They can also centralize everything an agency knows about a person in one place, including their eye color from their driver's license or their license plate from a traffic ticket, making it easy to build a detailed intelligence report. They can also use Gotham to search for a person based on a characteristic like their immigration status, what state they live in, or whether they have tattoos. Now, Palantir built its Gotham program specifically for its police and government clients. Look, as we know, there is a very real effort right now, and I'm sensing it big time with the way things are kind of going on social media sites. There's this very big effort to silence anyone who is critical of Israel. You know, the bots certainly exist, that's nothing new, but the threats have really been amped up. And the statements from government officials in regard to what is and isn't acceptable speech as it pertains to Israel has been ramped up. So, a perfect example, Cenk, is what we pushed back on just last week in regard to all of the reports that came out and the FBI investigation in regard to those 5 Israeli nationals who were seen celebrating as the World Trade Towers were being hit on 9/11. People were jumping down my throat at even mentioning that as if it was a totally made up conspiracy. I got a bunch of threats about it. But those reports were real. It was reported on by Fox News. It was also reported on by ABC News at the time, which we showed a clip of. I don't think this is about keeping Americans safe. I think this is about shutting Americans up.
Yeah. So look, if you see us speaking out forcefully against Israel and then you think, well, okay, well, the Americans are still allowed to do it. No, there's
for now.
No, it's not even that. It's actually a very small number of Americans that are able to do it. So I don't want you to get misled. Like, for example, I went to UCLA a couple of months ago to do a radio interview, and I was shocked at how reticent the students were to criticize Israel. So even though they were very much left-wing and did not agree with Israel, and I asked them why, and they said, well, they're making lists of people who criticize Israel, and then I won't be able to get a job, and this costs me a lot of money, and I need a job. And so it like super progressive, wants to do the right thing, wants to fight against genocide, worried about it. Then a friend came and he's like, oh, I'm gonna work in finance. There's no way I'm gonna criticize Israel. Because they literally said, they have lists on Wall Street, and that's public. That Bill Ackman and others have talked about it. Yeah, we will not hire you if you criticize Israel, and we'll try to ruin your life. So if you have a tiny amount of power like us, in that we have a show and they are trying to shut it down, but they're struggling because you guys keep signing up. So maybe they'll get us at some point. But there are supporters of Israel inside this country that are constantly trying to eliminate anyone who criticizes Israel. And the less power you have, the easier it is for them to bully and intimidate you, right? So, and by the way, if you get above us, it gets easier again, because if you're working for CNN or New York Times, it's super easy to get you fired, super easy, right? So we have a little bit of independence. Now, last things on this that are super important. Now, when you talked about this kind of surveillance, he says, oh yeah, my computer program would have picked this up and we'd have stopped it. Yeah, my ass you would have, okay? Yeah, it's so easy to say that. Yeah, I got one too. And it's so, is that what they're gonna do, actually find the mass shooter right before they do the shooting? No, this reminds me of like, oh yeah, well, you're not in favor of torture, but what if there was a ticking time bomb, right? No, there's no ticking time bomb. You just want to torture people, right? And no, you're not going to catch a mass shooter seconds before they get there. This isn't a movie show, a movie or a TV show. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to look through and try to find things that they find objectionable. So for example, this shooter in Minneapolis was a lunatic, was against Jews, Muslims, and then shot up a church. Can't figure it out. You know why? Because they're mentally ill, okay?
Yeah.
So now, do you think that if they left out Jews, Christians, etc., and that same person was like, oh, I hate Muslims, and I love Breivik who killed Muslims, and I love the Christchurch shooter who killed Muslims, etc., that this system would have picked them up? No way. There's no, you'd have to pick up half the country. Okay, you like, for people who make comments about against Islam, and by the way, should we be doing that? Should we be rounding up everyone who makes really anti-Muslim comments? I don't think we should be locking those people up. I don't think we should be arresting anyone for their thoughts or for pre-crime. Whether it's against Muslims, Jews, Israel, Turkey, whoever it might be, that doesn't make any sense at all. Do not trade away your liberty for security. You're not going to get it. The people in power are going to be a lot more secure. You are going to be less safe. Okay, and finally, Anna, look, the reason why I'm extra concerned is Trump brings in military in the streets, and now he's got masked, badgeless people doing law enforcement. And then when you add in Israeli-grade surveillance, so we surveil all American citizens, well, I object. Oh, good news, the Marines are here. You're not allowed to object. So this is a very scary road that we're on.
It sure is. All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about how much of a joke Tulsi Gabbard is. We've got yet another example of that, so stick around. I'll give you all the details.
Let's go to members on TYT.com. LCPR666 says, I see very similar demeanor to Ritchie in a lot of wealth. Disclaimer, of course, not all, but they really do worship money and think they're smarter and we're all suckers, and that they absolutely revel in superiority in wealth and privilege. They have no empathy, no consideration for anyone but their enjoyment. And when they get together, it's truly disgusting how they behave and talk about the, quote, poor suckers that don't have the intelligence to make the money that they make. And look, another thing that drives me crazy about that, I agree with you, brother. And then on top of that is, they think that they're so clever and amazing for actually just being an easy one-trick pony prostitute, right? Oh, like, and then I told AIPAC I'll do whatever Israel wants, even if they commit a genocide. Then they gave me $1.6 million. I'm so smart. No, you're not smart. You're corrupt. There's a giant difference. Art Guy says, given what we're learning about Israel's network of pernicious influence with the powerful, it seems pretty clear people are afraid to stand up to them. Yeah, I mean, if you think that people in mainstream media are not afraid of standing up to Israel, you don't know anyone in mainstream media. I mean, that's an absurd claim. Absurd.
They're terrified. They're absolutely terrified.
Yeah. Either they themselves love Israel and are super happy to protect Israel, right? Or they're scared out of their mind that they're gonna, you don't, okay, yeah. Go ahead, I dare one cable news anchor to do 20% of any of the commentary we've done on Israel. Guaranteed fired, guaranteed. That's why they're never gonna do it. You think they're gonna give up a multi-million-dollar job to do news? No, they're not gonna do the news. They're gonna do whatever propaganda that they were given. All right, Brian McGregor says, TYT should do a segment every week showcasing how much each member of the House and Senate has taken from special interests, like 6 to 10 at a time from both parties equally. I hear you, Brian, but God, that would take up the whole show. They're like you, but maybe you're right in that you might be surprised. They're almost all crooks. There's like 90% of them are crooks, and all their donors are like everything you imagine: defense contractor, oil companies, healthcare companies. They don't work for us at all. You think like that? Like you got told you got sold a bill of goods on cable news and in mainstream media. Oh no, the Republicans are bad. Oh, but your Democratic congresspeople, oh they're amazing. No, like Representative Ramirez just said, there's 8 or 9 of us who are honest in Congress. Wow, that's so reassuring. And I credit her for her honesty. Georgie Girl said, and I'm so glad to see you that you've been on CNN. Hope you continue to make more and more appearances in mainstream media. The only Republicans in my family circle watch Fox, of course, but also CNN, or so they tell me. I'm hoping it's true and that they saw you there. I worry that they don't see truth anymore. They cannot talk about politics or anything approaching it. Bless your heart for working so hard at getting out there. I can't describe how much I appreciate it and how much hope it gives me.
Well, I'm scheduled to go back on Abby Phillips's show on Tuesday. So let's hope that actually happens. I think it is, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right, on YouTube member section, Stephen Early says, wow, Anna at work post jet lag, am not worthy of your work ethic.
I'm dying right now.
Yeah, but
I'm doing my best though. Yeah.
But Stephen, we appreciate that you appreciate it, so that's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Freshwater Dive says, we will never see this guy again, referring to the Israeli pedophile. Dawn Whitehead says, today's my 57th birthday. Can I get a birthday shout out? Thanks, love TYT. Happy birthday, Dawn.
Happy birthday.
Woo. We'll be back. All right, guys, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Let me tell you about a sponsor that we really like and then we think can be helpful to you guys. So we've got, unfortunately in America, shady agents and insurance companies circling like vultures, trying to sell you whatever junk plans make the most money. Now, when you're on Medicare, most folks get a plan on top, and that's why I like Chapter. They're not owned by an insurance company. They don't push garbage plans to make a buck. Their Medicare advisors help you find the best plan for you. And we did our research on it. It's true. Chapter is also the only one that reviews all plan options nationwide. So if you got a good plan, you're gonna stick with it and you're gonna have peace of mind. But if they find you a better plan, people save on average $1,100 a year. And so the way to do that is it's so easy. 20-minute call and it could save you that much money or more, because that's just an average. Call them today at 805-201-2275. 805-201-2275. It's fast and it's free. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right, well, I wanted to do a little bit of a check-in on Tulsi Gabbard, the director of DNI. So let's get to it. Tulsi Gabbard's best efforts to suck up to Donald Trump and essentially ingratiate herself with the president has led to calls to essentially fire her as the head of national intelligence. Now, why is that? Well, there's a new Wall Street Journal piece out. The title is Tulsi Gabbard blindsided CIA over revoking clearance of undercover officer. Now, not only did she revoke an undercover officer's clearance, she also identified this individual, which is insane. So look, however you feel about the CIA, however you feel about the intelligence community, just coming out and identifying people like this is very dangerous for the person who's being identified and their family members. So how were they blindsided? Well, Gabbard blew the agent's cover in a tweet along with the names of 36 other current and former intel officials whose clearances she revoked. And her reasons for doing so were vague, but I think you can put two and two together, right? Again, she's like desperately trying to ingratiate herself with Trump after she, for like 5 seconds, did her job appropriately, admitted in a hearing that Iran was not building nuclear weapons. That upset Trump, because he's a bitch for Israel, of course, and he has to do Israel's bidding, including bombing Iran's nuclear sites. And so, she took some lashings, and now she's bringing up Russiagate again to ingratiate herself with Trump. So she wrote on X, being entrusted with a security clearance is a privilege, not a right. Those in the intelligence community who betray their oath to the Constitution and put their own interests ahead of the interests of the American people have broken the sacred trust they promised to uphold. This is why, at President Trump's direction, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence directed the revocation of the security clearances of 37 current and former intelligence professionals who have abused the public trust by politicizing and manipulating intelligence, leaking classified intelligence without authorization, and or committing intentional egregious violations of tradecraft standards. Now, of course, she didn't specify what they leaked or provide any evidence of wrongdoing. I mean, that's what transparency would look like. But most of the 37 people had either participated in intelligence assessments related to Russia's attempts to influence the outcome of the 2016 US presidential election, or had signed a 2019 letter calling for President Trump's impeachment. So it seems like this, again, is yet another attempt to punish anyone who upset Donald Trump or crossed Donald Trump in some way. And it may also be another demonstration of incompetence because, as the Journal reports, Gabbard did not know the CIA officer had been working undercover. Seems like something you should know as head of DNI, right? Head of national intelligence. Now, the CIA official whose clearance was revoked last week is a longtime Russia hand at the agency, meaning his investigations and undercover work has to do with Russia. The officer has held intelligence posts for more than 20 years and worked from 2014 to 2017 as an expert on Russia and Eurasia on the National Intelligence Council, according to a publicly listed biography. Now, security clearance allow a person to handle secret documents, obviously, and are an essential part of working in intelligence. So revoking someone's security clearances effectively terminates their employment. Cenk.
Not that, and not just that, it terminates their career. You might be able to get a job doing something else, maybe tangentially, but your multi-decade career is wiped out in an instant once you lose your security clearance. So, look, she talked about breaking a sacred trust. Well, I don't know that it gets any more sacred trust than an undercover agent for America, and you just put his name out there and endanger his life, let alone his career. So that's definitely breaking a sacred trust. And your job at DNI is to literally coordinate all the different intelligence agencies. So if you don't coordinate with the CIA before you out 37 CIA agents, you have done a miserable job at your chosen profession. I mean, You just literally can't do worse than that. No coordination, vomit out a list, end their careers, include an undercover agent in there. It's just, it's shameful. Now, the only thing worse is why, right? So I've lost all faith in our government and our institutions, as have a huge percentage of Americans, and that you should lose faith in it. So why? So first of all, you have, the politicians that don't work for us at all. They just work for their donors, period. And that's true under Republicans and Democrats. So the country didn't want us to give more money to Israel in the middle of a genocide. And Biden was like, shut up, I'm gonna give it to them. Because why? AIPAC's the top donor. What does Trump say? He says the same exact thing. So whether Trump wins or Biden wins, Republicans win or Democrats win, AIPAC is always in charge, right? But again, it's just, they're an interesting symbol right now because they're a donor that happens to be in favor of genocide, and almost the entire Congress is on their side. So that's one way that you lose faith in your so-called representatives, because they're not representing you at all. And then the Democrats get into office and they say, oh, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z, and then they never do it. Never. Oh, well, we couldn't, and the parliamentarian and the filibuster. And so, hey, all of our supporters and influencers yell at anyone who tells you the truth about us. And then Trump gets in and he's like, oh, my feelings were hurt because I lost the 2020 election. I wanna pretend that I didn't, so go on a political witch hunt, find anyone who won't lie for me and fire them. It's just disgusting. Just when you thought it couldn't get worse than Biden, and I did think it could get worse than Biden, that's why I voted against Trump. And yeah, it got worse. Of course it did. It always gets worse. So now Trump is like, all right, Tulsi, you once said the truth about Iran, so I almost fired you. Remember the donors are Israel. Shut up and give them the war they want, okay? So she's like, okay, sorry. And by the way, let's distract everyone. Obama committed treason. Whatever, dude. Just, yeah, no evidence, no proof, no nothing. And then, by the way, she fires these 37 people. Were they America first, Israel first, neither? I have no idea. I mean, you'll never know because our government is totally lying to us. So she could have fired these people for a completely different reason, and we'll never find out.
Other things I want to just quickly mention in the context of this story, Tulsi Gabbard, who I had already identified as a fraud literally years ago, loves to repeatedly talk about her anti-war credentials. She's totally against regime change wars, although she's currently working for a president who in his first term tried to overthrow the leader of Venezuela, I think twice, if I'm not mistaken, and failed at it. Now, I have no love for the leader of Venezuela. I think that he obviously has crossed the line and is in authoritarian territory, is not allowing for free and fair elections. But putting that aside, I don't think the US should meddle in what's happening in countries around the world. Right now, Donald Trump has been engaging in a military buildup off the coast of Venezuela. He claims that, it's all about, I don't even know what the excuse is, to be honest with you. Now, the Chinese think that this is about oil. China relies on Venezuela for oil, and they believe the United States is trying to, undercut China by preventing them from being able to export oil from Venezuela, which, by the way, real smart at a time when we're all worried about inflation because of tariffs. Why don't you lessen the global oil supply, smart guy? But it's still, at the end of the day, what's really concerning here is he's talking about doing, military operations against cartels in Mexico. We already have CIA operating in Mexico as we speak. That's being widely reported on. You have a US military buildup off the coast of Venezuela. What happened, Tulsi? What happened to your anti-war credentials, huh? It's, this woman has fully debased herself at a time when I didn't think she could potentially debase herself anymore. So yeah. I guess congratulations, Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, so I have one last thing on this. So if anyone, Republican, Democrat, gets in office and then says, hey, look, here's what the CIA is doing wrong, and here are the receipts. So I found them either doing torture or warrantless wiretapping or my God, working against Trump or Biden, et cetera. But here's the actual proof of it, right? Here's the nefarious things they did, and I can't wait to prove it in court. I say, okay, I'm all ears. You crazy? You think I don't think that the CIA did anything wrong. No, I think the CIA probably did a lot of things wrong. So, but instead, we never get that. Never, ever, ever, okay? Until Trump, what we got was, no, shut up about the CIA. CIA is, oh, well, we have some, Democrats would say we'd have some concerns. Okay, then what's your concerns? Nothing. You never question the CIA. The CIA was doing torture. They had it on tape. Then they burned the tapes, which is totally illegal. And they did it in front of everyone. And then the Democrats covered up for him. And then the Republicans, under Trump in his first term, took the person who burned the tapes and made her head of the CIA, okay? So they aid and abet all the criminality of the CIA. So you'll excuse me if I don't believe them. Oh, trust me, bro, we have secret evidence that they were working on a treason plan with Obama. And it's not because they hurt Trump's feelings. Trust me, bro. No, I don't trust you at all. I have no faith in you at all. I think you're a giant liar. I think almost everyone in government is a giant liar. And so if they fired these people, and as usual presented no evidence, my guess is that those are probably the 37 best people at the CIA.
Well, there is one area where the American public, or at least a majority of the American public, trust Trump, and that's on how he's handling crime. So I wanted to get to that story as reported by Axios, and it also has to do with a poll that was honestly somewhat surprising, but let's get to the details. Turns out Americans hate crime, and as a result, as Trump is presenting himself as the ultimate crime fighter in the country, he's getting some good ratings on how he is keeping Americans safe, allegedly. And this is based on a new poll that came out. This is an AP NORC poll, and I want to get to some of the details. So why don't we put up this graphic, which kind of gives you a sense of how Americans are feeling. So according to this survey, the share of Americans who say they think crime is a major problem in certain locations really depends on which location we're talking about. So 81% of Americans do think that crime is a major problem in large cities. Now, when it comes to the United States overall, that number goes down to 66%. But Cenk, interestingly enough, when it comes to taking stock of their own communities, only 24% of the people surveyed felt that crime is a major problem in their community. So
yeah, I have.
Yeah, that is interesting. I do as well. But hold on, I just want to say that, look, when you break things down by party identity, so 96% of Republicans see crime as a major problem in large cities, along with 68% of Democrats. That's still a significant majority among Democratic voters, okay? And people who actually live in big cities are more likely than those who live in like the cushy burbs to say that crime is a major problem in their community. And so I've got a lot to say about that and synthesize the results of this poll, but I'm curious what you think, Cenk.
Yeah, so I think that this is a really interesting findings, and it proves a couple of different sides right, and so that's why I'm fascinated by it. But first, before we do anything else, you have to realize that there's two different things here. One is the actual issue itself of crime, and the other is the politics of that issue, okay? So when we said, for example, on this show, that crime had gone up during COVID, 2019, 2023, the politics of that for a lot of Democrats and people on the left was, no, we should say that the crime did not go up. It's a right-wing narrative. We should ignore it completely and just yell at anyone who brings up crime and accuse them of being fascist. Okay, so if you think that didn't happen, you're 100% wrong. It's verifiable. It definitely happened. It happened to us. It happened to anyone who suggested that crime was real. Okay, so then we said, yeah, but guys, it is real and people are concerned about it. And then in 24 and 25, what happened was crime started to go down. And so that the dip in crime is also real. So there's some questions around Washington DC's numbers, et cetera. But overall for the FBI tracking it, it's not only gone down in those years, but it's now, according to some analysis, at a 20-year low. So if you think that crime is still super high and you're worried about it, it's the worst it's ever been, that's just not true, okay? saying that crime didn't go up wasn't true for 4 years. Saying that crime is not going down, if you're a Republican or a right-winger right now, is not true, okay? So you can do partisanship all you want, but there is reality, right? Now, why crime went down recently is a super interesting question. We'll talk about it in a sec. But for those of us who said this is a massive political issue, you have to be careful. Well, obviously these numbers validate what we're saying, with 81% of Americans concerned that large cities have a lot of crime, but it was 66% overall, which is a giant number, right? On the other hand, if you say, well, we think it's being overhyped, especially today as crime is dipping, you're also right. If you say it today, not when it was rising, but when now it's dropping, right? And so that 24% saying, hey, in my community, I don't think it's much of an issue, that is also correct, right? So there's, on the issue of actual crime, good news, things are starting to get better and the numbers are going down, and we should learn some of the lessons from that. Although, again, if you're a partisan, you might not like some of the conclusions. We'll get back to that in a second, right? But if you're saying that, oh, okay, since the number's going down, we should go tell everyone crime is no big deal. No. That is a gross mishandling of the politics of the situation. I think that there's a much better way to handle it, but again, I'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, what makes this story or the topic of crime so difficult to report on or talk about is it's not really an issue that's handled on a national level, right? A lot of the policies on a state and local level have an impact on how crime either rises or is dealt with effectively, right? And the other thing that I just really want to drive home to people is that there's this conflation with the typical crime that you think of, right? Homicides, rapes, things like that, theft, and just general disorder. And I think when people in big cities see the increasing disorder, and usually it's because of, let's just keep it real, there's a serious problem in the country right now with drug addiction. And you see it on the streets if you live in a big city. And if someone is on, let's say, illicit drugs like meth, they might act erratically, they might act violently. And so people will see that on the streets and it'll just give them this general feeling that crime has increased. And so I think the way that we handle drug policy in some big cities needs to be revised a little bit, and not back to the tough on crime, throw everyone who's addicted to drugs in prison. I do not want that. That was not effective. That form of the war on drugs was a complete and utter disaster. But there needs to be a way of helping people detox and get rehabilitated so they can live healthy lives, because what we're doing in some of these big cities not only victimizes the person who's struggling with the addiction and is on the street struggling with that addiction, it also harms the local community as well and gives the perception that that disorder is representative of crime being out of control. You get what I mean?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of that issue, look, I want to dive into why I think crime went down. I think that COVID was a much larger factor than people initially realized as to why crime went up. We're social animals. And when we all got locked up in isolation, it drives us a little crazy. So I think there was a sociological reason why crime went up. Now, did it aggravate it that we passed some laws that caused some significant retail theft, car theft, etc.? Well, I think so.
Yes, it did. But let's not beat around the bush. It did.
Yeah,
it did.
but so I hear you, Anna. So, and I think it did. And so for the folks that see the crime going down and say, see, it didn't, but wait a minute, hold on. You have to take into account, okay, well, obviously on COVID, we're past COVID, so that's brought some of the numbers down. But a lot of the big cities where we were seeing that crime, the prosecutors and the mayors got fired by the people.
They sure did.
And
they
then
sure did.
And then those cities and states changed laws, including in California. So did that help bring crime down? Probably, right? So I would love to see some studies on it and get a better sense of it. On the other hand, though, there's 5% less cops in the country today than there was pre-2020. So cops are down. And we are at a 20-year low now that the significant drops in 24 and 25, right? So that gives you a sense of maybe cops aren't the answer, right? So, I'm sure that it depends on the situation, and are the cops down in rural areas but not in cities? There's so many things that are complexities to this. Obviously, the partisans on both sides won't talk about any of those complexities. One will say there's no crime and it's a right-wing narrative. Another will say bring in the Marines and military rule, otherwise we won't be able to solve it. And I don't think either one of those is the right answer. Politically, I have an answer. Politically, why don't we say, hey, as Democrats, we're better at solving crime. And we're gonna show you, okay? Here's what we're gonna do. And it doesn't have to be more cops. It could be more cops, it could be less cops, but you've gotta actually bring crime down. A, you have to have a plan and not say it doesn't exist. And B, you've gotta actually deliver. That's the hardest part for Democrats, not voters, but the politicians. They don't love to deliver, right? So if you bring crime down, and then you should beat your chest over it and say, goddamn right, look at the things we did and look at the results it got. We're better at bringing crime down. That is much better politics.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we've got more news. I don't know exactly what we're gonna have to cover that guy who thinks the Ottoman Empire still exists. It's hilarious.
Back on TYT, let's go to Super Chat. Bear Witness Gaming says, I'm so proud of your courage to speak truth when it matters the most. When I say I'm proud to be an American, it's only because of heroes like you. Please keep standing for what's right, no matter what others might say. Well, you're wonderful for saying that. Look, we need all the help we can get from you guys. So things as simple as ringing the bell, just subscribing to the channel for free. If you can, being a member, sharing the stream, talking about it with your friends. Why? Why do we need that? Because almost everyone in every corner of power has attacked us and is in the middle of attacking us. So on our coverage of Israel, oh my God. Obviously I can't tell you all the things that happen behind the scenes, but yeah, we're besieged, okay? On the issue, whenever we challenge any political wing, then their partisans attack. Young Turks must be destroyed, says the right wing. Some weirdos on the left. Certainly the establishment, certainly the mainstream media. So when everyone's trying to tear you down, and by the way, it might mean, oh no, you're a bad person and that's why everybody's attacking you at once. Or it might mean, because you're a rare show saying things that are true. And so when you say things that are true, sometimes the right will be pissed at you, sometimes the left, and oftentimes the establishment will be mad at you, right? Foreign governments, corporations, etc. The only people we have is you guys. So that's why we love you guys. That's why we appreciate comments like that, the super chats, and signing up and spreading the word. And either we're gonna do this together or they're gonna take us out. And then you'll get back to perfectly good robots on all sides. Oh, Democratic leaders are great. Republicans are the best. Oh my God, our government is so non-corrupt. Yeah. So there's a lot of that trash, and it's unfortunately most of the media these days. Mikey 3343 says, I only know of one knucklehead who would give up millions as a cable anchor in order to speak truth to power. Well, Mikey, thanks for noticing that. You're one of like 3 people on the internet. I gave up millions of dollars from MSNBC to come tell you guys the truth. And a bunch of a-holes that came by 13 seconds ago online. Oh, he's a grifter, If I wanted to grift, why wouldn't I just stay at MSNBC, you idiots? Right? Why wouldn't I have stayed at Sirius Satellite Radio when they offered us a contract? They didn't do anything wrong. MSNBC did do something wrong. Anyways, if we wanted to make money, guys, oh my God, all you got to do is sell out. You're gonna make unbelievable money. If I turn pro-Israel, do you have any idea how quickly I can get a cable news anchor job, make millions a year? If I say, oh yeah, Democrats are wonderful, all their politicians are honest, instantly millions of dollars easily on cable news. Kenyatta Gaines says, just went to the grocery store for a 24-pack of Coronas, $40. Trump about to hit the iceberg head on.
I started using the word, the groceries
Okay, Kenyatta, you just had the best on the ground reporting in America. You're right. Once beer starts getting to that price, people are gonna get pissed. And Trump can do all the yakety yak and so can all of his lackeys, and it's not gonna help. In Liberty and Guns We Trust said, this is a perfect example of greed and selling one's soul for money. It's evil, it's the definition of blood money. Yeah, they'll get richer, but they'll never be respected by moral and decent people, referring to Ritchie Torres and all the people selling out for AIPAC. On TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I just need to do a couple comments here. Hunter Drake on Super Chat said, I know Anna isn't wanting it right now, but between kids in Gaza and the pedo Israeli official, Anna's passionate about this, makes me want to say she would be a great mom. So
I would be an amazing mom. I agree with you on that. I do not want to be a mom though.
And by the way, that's why you don't want to be a mom, because it would stress you out and you would be, OCD to the nth degree on it. Anyway, Jenna 111382 says, why don't we have an extradition treaty with Israel? Are they not our most important ally? So Jenna, we do. We just never enforce it. Almost never do we ask Israel for any of their criminals back because
we didn't have one until like the late 90s, by the way.
Yeah, it's absurd. And last one, Trisha Briggs says, thank you for doing that interview. I live in Illinois and I'm ashamed to admit that I didn't know of Representative Ramirez. Happy 55 months, TYT. Well, thank you for being with us for that long. And yeah, we love introducing you to new people that you could support if they're good folks, and I think Representative Ramirez is. And Adil Hamid, thank you for joining through YouTube. We appreciate you. Anna, what's next?
Well, this one has to do with an empire you might be familiar with, Cenk. So let's get to our next story.
Turkey has a president who has made statements relative to reestablishing the Ottoman Empire. And he wants to be the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. And so we have to make sure that is what is happening in the Middle East, that we're not getting focused someplace and letting Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood play victim.
Yes, our target should be a NATO ally, Turkey. And the person you just heard from is a Republican congressman, Josh Brecheen, who is basically embarrassing himself at a town hall in Oklahoma. This happened earlier this week. He was fear-mongering about the Ottoman Empire and the Muslim Brotherhood. And Cenk, as someone who was actually born in Turkey, are you worried about the reemergence of the Ottoman Empire?
Okay, I mean, so Louis Gohmert's back, the ghost of Louis Gohmert. So Representative Gohmert did a speech during the Obama administration where he said that Obama was looking to reconstitute the Ottoman Empire. Now, Obama's been out of office for a while, and the Ottoman Empire appears to be utterly unreconstituted. But that's never stopped Republicans before. Obviously, what this is a bag of squirrels. He was asked about Israel. We'll give you some of the tape in a second. So the minute he's asked about AIPAC, where he takes a lot of money from and does trips with, etc., he's like, Turkey, Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, Iran, the Squirrel Brotherhood. The real problem is the Squirrel Brotherhood. They're gonna bring back the Squirrel Empire. And we just cannot have it, okay? Now, whatever you do, do not talk about Israel and the money I'm taking from the Israeli lobby. Yeah, I got it.
And look, just a little bit of nuance before we go to more of this clown. Look, I've got no love for Erdogan in Turkey at all. And it does appear that he's trying to move away from a secular society to one that only allows, Muslim faith. And that's not good. But that's different from trying to reestablish the Ottoman Empire, clearly. And you're right, Cenk, he was deflecting because he didn't want to talk about the obvious war crimes that Israel is currently committing, the just complete destruction of international laws. Because honestly, how can the West really talk about the importance of human rights or following international laws when we've allowed Israel to do anything and everything it wants with no consequences? So with that in mind, let's go to the congressman who refused to say much of anything about Gaza and instead argued that the real genocide is happening in Syria. Take a look.
Do you realize that there are 750,000 people, Christians and Druze, that are being encircled in Soweto, an hour to the north of Israel, and nobody is talking about them? 750,000, up to 10,000 people have already been slaughtered. I've seen the videos of babies dead with their grandparents shoved off of rooftops to save buildings. An American citizen jumping off of a rooftop in Syria, being forced to jump off a rooftop, and while he was shot. There is a massacre and a genocide happening by the Muslim Brotherhood, and everybody is focused on Gaza. But the same ideology that Israel has to be around and coexist with it will come to America. We've got Sharia law trying to be set up in America today. Absolutely we do. You have Sharia law trying to be established in America today. The Muslim Brotherhood is the ideology. People, you're falling into the Muslim Brotherhood trap to be focused in one area and not see the genocide that is happening in Syria.
Okay, before I continue, I just want to give the town hall attendants, this is Oklahoma. Just a big round of applause. That was amazing. Obviously, they're rejecting his fear-mongering here about Muslims. That's what he's trying to do. And I give them a lot of love and credit for doing so. But I also want to just say the violence that's happening in Syria should not be minimized. It is true that the Druze absolutely are facing persecution from the Syrian government, which is now led by a former Al-Qaeda member. Let's just keep it real. We know about that. We've been reporting on that. And it's reported that about 1,400 civilians were killed in the sectarian violence that escalated again just this past July. But let's not deflect from what he was asked to talk about, which is what's happening in Gaza, where 63,000 Palestinians that we know of have been killed at the very least. Okay, that doesn't count the people who are trapped under the rubble, the bodies trapped under the rubble. And he claims there's no genocide happening in Gaza whatsoever. And if you think it is a genocide, well, you're falling for the Muslim Brotherhood propaganda. And then an attendee asked him about taking AIPAC money. Love that someone did that. Let's see how that went.
Lobbying, you get paid by AIPAC $35,000. I did not get paid by AIPAC $35,000. That's what they have it on your Facebook. So can I explain to you what thing? Okay, let me just. I'm gonna finish. I'm gonna finish, and then you correct me. Okay. You made a statement. Let me correct it. Okay. AIPAC is an organization that supports Israel. Before I ran for Congress, because of my biblical beliefs, I support Israel. I believe in Genesis 12 and Genesis 17. I believe that there is something very special biblically about the covenant with the land of Israel. It's not in the Bible. It's not in the Bible. Let me finish. It doesn't mean I give Israel a pass to do whatever they want to, but I have a biblical belief. Can I finish? But go ahead. You're right. Let me finish this. Let me finish what I'm saying. All right, so I want you to make sure you understand. Right, I understand. I fully respect it. I fully respect. There are members of AIPAC who also give to members of Congress, and that money is ascribed to as if it comes from AIPAC. But the AIPAC cannot, to that level, give money. But there are people who support Israel like I do, and do give me campaign donations.
Okay, so he's received, close to $30,000 from the Israel lobby. It's incredible. And by the way, one of the attendees also brought up the Israeli pedophile that was allowed to fly back to Israel and will probably never come back to face the felony charges that he is, being charged with. But Cenk, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and of course, the congressman didn't say to bring him back or anything like that. But before we do anything else, Hannah, I want to chastise you. I mean, you criticized the Turkish government earlier, so obviously you're anti-Turkish. And you're using anti-Turkish tropes, and I think your career should be ruined. I think you should be arrested, denaturalized, and deported. And I'm expecting congressional hearings.
Okay, I only have one word for you, Cenk. One word for you: siktir.
No, wait. I'm hearing no. Turks don't get that. Neither does anyone else. Only Israel does. Okay, got it. So now, in reality, Erdogan is snuffing out democracy in Turkey as we speak. Is he reconstituting the Ottoman Empire? Dude, he'd be lucky to reconstitute his next term, right? He's deeply unpopular, and that's why he's trying to kill off democracy. Oh, look, someone from an ethnic background can criticize a country they came from. Wow, that's so hard. Okay, so anyways, now putting this guy, talking about this guy. So he says, it's not that I'm taking money from AIPAC, it's that of my biblical beliefs. I mean, imagine they just name a country Canaan, and you're like, wait, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, no, it's based on the Canaanites in the Bible. So now you have to give them $300 billion, and you have to let them commit a genocide, and you have to do everything they order you to do. And if any of the Canaanites come here and rape American kids, you have to let them go. Why? Because of my biblical beliefs about the Canaanites, and they named the country Canaan, so I'm done. I mean, that would be the dumbest thing you've ever heard, right? That is literally his argument, literally, okay? So now, how about Sharia law? Should we be concerned about that? Yeah, you should be. I'm reporting now, right, they're about to take Nebraska as we speak. Omaha's gone, and they're moving their Ottoman troops around, and then they're gonna institute Sharia law at first in Nebraska, then obviously Kansas and Missouri. All right, look, if you're dumb enough to believe that Sharia law is imminent in America, there's nothing I could do to help you because you're lack the intelligence to be able to make decisions that make sense. And then one of our members, Infinity, wrote in, did you hear the guy laughing in the background when he mentioned the Ottoman Empire? Even his audience didn't buy it. You're right, Infinity, and thank you for being a member, tyt.com/join to be part of the show. Yeah, we noticed that because as Anna pointed out, even his own residents there are like, come on, jackass, there's no Sharia law coming here to Oklahoma, okay? Focus on what's actually real. Oh, what's real? Oh, I don't know, maybe AIPAC buying almost all of our politicians and insisting that they have biblical beliefs or political beliefs that kowtow to everything the current Israeli government wants. No, that's not the threat. That's not the threat, even though AIPAC, let alone the rest of the Israeli lobby, has given money to 65% of Congress. Even though our Congress is obviously controlled by a foreign government, that's not the issue. What if they brought back the Ottoman Empire from the 1600s? And Sharia law, come on. It's totally insulting our intelligence. And so if you're, and lastly, he's like, oh, look, remember the squirrel about the Syria. I'm very concerned about Syria, right? Can you remind me who helped put that Syrian government into place?
The United States and Israel.
Right, Israel.
The rebels.
Okay,
yeah.
United States, Israel, and Turkey, okay?
Yeah.
Oh no, it's the Ottoman Empire. Okay, no, but literally those three countries were like, oh, Assad is not listening to Israel's orders. We have to eliminate Assad. Now Assad's a terrible guy. No one's missing him, right? But they're like, okay, we got a great new alternative. The guy from Al Qaeda. And by the way, finally, why? Is it because Turkey's so powerful? No, although they have some power here. But it's mainly because Israel wanted to take Western Syria. I'm hearing they have taken Western Syria. It's currently under Israeli occupation. No one actually talks about that, right?
Right.
And by the way, the Turks took northern Syria, so they're both happy. And finally, Israel wanted to be able to say, oh my God, my neighbor's Al Qaeda guy. Don't ignore that I put him in. Ignore that I bombed Assad so that he could come in and we handpicked him. Okay, oh, Al Qaeda, Muslim Brotherhood. Oh my God, I am in so much worried about my self-defense. What can I do? I guess I got to take half of Syria for greater Israel. I mean, because you're anti-Semitic and Sharia law. Okay.
Crazy.
All right.
Anyway, that's it for me. But Cenk has an amazing interview coming up next, so stick around. And I'll see you all soon.
Yeah, we're coming back with Dr. Mohammed Mustafa. He's a doctor, and we're going to talk about Gaza. I think you guys are really going to appreciate it, and we appreciate you, Anna, for coming in under these circumstances.
My pleasure.
All right. So everybody, stick around. We got that great interview coming up now.
Turkey.
back on the Young Turks. We've got a great interview for you guys. Dr. Mohammed Mustafa, he's been in Gaza, and we want to know about his experiences there. So first, welcome.
Thank you for having me, man.
No problem. So Mo, let's first talk about your experience in Gaza, and then I want to go back and hear about your background, okay? So when were you there?
So I was there last year in June in 2024, and I was also there this year in March and April 2025. So I was there actually the night that the ceasefire broke, this particular time around, which was obviously quite a chaotic day. And I was also there in June last year when they rescued the 4 Israeli hostages, and they killed and murdered 1,400 and injured 1,400 people. So I was there for some of the worst mass casualty events of the war.
Yeah. So what kind of doctor are you?
I'm an emergency physician.
So there's a lot of work for you there.
There's a lot, and I'm a fluent Arabic speaker as well, which changes things, you know, because if you go there as a doctor and you don't speak Arabic, it's different when you do speak Arabic. You know, in a mass casualty event, you're getting all the families and they're pulling you left, right, and center to talk and deal with what's going on, and also as well, you get to understand what happened. They get to tell you what happened, and that really opened up my eyes to some of the atrocities that had happened in Gaza.
Yeah. So what did you expect going in?
You know, you've seen the images obviously on your phones and on your TV screens, and as you're scrolling through, you know, you get a glimpse of about 30 seconds, and you see these like, you know, these decapitated children, these burns, and limbs missing. But when you go to Gaza, you know, you're in the emergency room, and you're there for 12 hours, 13 hours, dealing with that mass casualty, that one mass casualty event that took you 30 seconds to scroll on. When you're there, you're dealing with it for 17, 18 hours. You're watching people slowly die on the floor. You're watching them bleed out to death. You're watching maggots grow out of their wounds over the days while you're there. So, you know, for me, it became not just this thing that I would scroll past. It became this every day. I would see those people, that same person that you would scroll past. I saw them every single day, and I would see them deteriorate every single day until they died.
So when you see American politicians and some American media being callous and describing them as, you know, terrorists, and they voted for Hamas, so they have it coming, or it's not a big deal, and how about October 7th, etc. Not to say that October 7th wasn't important, but now Israel has done 60 October 7ths on Gaza. But you were there, and you saw the kids dying, and you saw the people dying, and you saw what Israel did to them. So how do you feel when you see someone on TV trying to minimize it?
You know, I think you've got to take this a step back, and you just got to look at the broader picture. You know, before this, they killed 1 million civilians in Iraq in an illegal war, in an unjustified war. They went to Afghanistan and committed war crimes. They starved with sanctions and killed 500,000 Iraqi babies in the 90s that the American Defense Secretary said was fine, was acceptable. So, you know, when you see all of this, especially growing up as an Arab and as a Muslim, you're not surprised that this is the way that they talk about you. They've justified the killing of people that look like you for decades. So, you know, to me, it's not a surprise, but it's always shocking, the gaslighting now. Because, you know, back then in the 90s and in the early 2000s, there wasn't social media available, but we're literally watching a genocide unfold in 4K. And I think that's what, you know, when you're there and you're watching, you know, like I've been interviewed with peers, but you know, I said to him, I said, you know, you would sit there and you would say that you would have a moral quandary over what's going on. And I'm sat here in Gaza with women coming to the hospital with their children in plastic bags, whatever remained of them. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no moral quandary here. You can't incinerate and melt children and justify that in any kind of way. But this is what we're being told.
Yeah, so I view the American media and Western media overall as deeply complicit. That may be even more guilty than the politicians. Like, so the politicians have their agendas, and they, in America, legalized briberies allowed. So Israel can buy them, Qatar can buy them, any government can really, almost any government can buy them through citizens that favor them here in America, etc. Corporations buy them all the time, etc. But the media has less of an excuse. And in my lifetime, you know, I'm from Turkey originally, so I grew up Muslim. The American media has done nothing but characterize Muslims as terrorists. And so like when you, in a weird way, this conflict in Gaza has humanized Muslims for Americans more than anything else I've ever seen in my lifetime. But pre this catastrophe, if I said, Muslims are human beings too, I'd get a wall of like, don't be ridiculous. You're being apologists for these terrorists, etc. And that thought didn't come out of nowhere, and that thought didn't just come out of right-wing media. It came out of mainstream media. So as a Muslim, how does that make you feel?
It doesn't really matter how it makes me feel. It's the reality that I care about. The reality is they're starving 1 million children in Gaza. They're starving 1 million Muslim children. So even though it's humanized us to the public, the policies remain the same. So, we have to move past rhetoric, because all we've received, even from the Biden administration, it would leak that, Biden called Netanyahu an asshole or this, that, and the other. And you think, oh, maybe there's some progress, but there never is. It's only the rhetoric that changes. So to me, as an Arab, as a Muslim, and I'm looking at this and I'm going, it doesn't matter to me if the rhetoric changes, because whether the rhetoric is pro-Arabs or anti-Arabs, they're still killing Arabs. And I think that's what we need to understand as a group, that it's until the rhetoric changes, until the actions change, we can't really pay too much attention to the rhetoric.
Yeah. So weren't you afraid for your life? I mean, I think it takes a lot of courage. Honestly, I don't know that I'd go to Gaza. No, I know I wouldn't go to Gaza. I mean, knowing what I've said, and since I'm in media, Israel would almost certainly execute me. Right. So, and they execute Americans all the time, and no one cares, right? Especially if they're Muslim American. But you went there, and they're bombing the hospitals. You've got family. Weren't you worried?
I remember when I was in the emergency room and we had a mass casualty event, and what I was doing was I was recording and sharing what was going on. And I remember this doctor came in, and it was an American doctor, and she said, "You're not allowed to film in here." And I stood in this pile of these children, these dead children, and I said, "And is this allowed? Is this allowed?" So we're not allowed to film what's going on, but they're allowed to kill these children. That's the rules that we're playing by. And because I was filming what was going on, these videos were getting millions of views around the world. And I was told while I was there that I need to leave Gaza. I was told that people were worried for my safety, because while I was there, they bombed the hospital that I was in. They bombed the UN safe house and killed international aid workers while I was there. They executed those paramedics and buried them alive while I was there. And they also burnt journalists alive in their tents while I was there. So there were many times where, I felt like my life was in danger. But, I'm not going to center myself on this. What we have to center is those kids in Gaza. We have to center those children in Gaza. That's what needs centering, not the way that I feel or whether I was in danger, because me being in danger is temporary. But what's happening in the Middle East, it's not just Gaza that's in danger. It's Lebanon that's being bombed every day. It's the incursions into Syria. It's Yemen that's being bombed. It's the pushing for a war in Iran now, where it's going to destabilize the whole region. This is what's going on. And we need to use every minute and every second of airtime to point that out, that this whole region is in danger. And unless we stop what's going on in Gaza, it will engulf the whole region.
So as you try to get that message out, my guess is that some of the folks that you talk to in media will say, well, I don't know, that sounds pretty anti-Semitic of you to say facts about Israel. I mean, your facts should shut up. Otherwise, that means you hate Jews. I mean, Israel is allowed to kill all those children, and you're not allowed to complain about it. And what do you mean that they're bombing Lebanon and Yemen and Syria? That's true, but you're not allowed to say it. It sounds like you're saying that they're starting the wars. In fact, of course, don't you apologize for Hamas, etc. So when that happens, and it's someone who's and obviously a propagandist for Israel pretending to be a reporter, how do you deal with it?
You just got to take a step back. At the end of the day, the truth is on our side. At the end of the day, things like Hamas, Hezbollah, all of these things, they wouldn't exist without the occupation, right? They were born out of the occupation. And I think when you center the occupation as the root cause of the problem, when you center the fact that it is an apartheid state, when you center the fact that the ICC and the ICJ and every human rights organization in the world pretty much, including Israeli's own human rights organizations, are all saying the same thing. The game has changed now. You know, the world is not believing the propaganda anymore. The world actually wants to listen to Palestinians. What's happened has humanized Palestinians and Arabs, and it's taken us to a different stratosphere now. Now we're able to sit down on tables, and Donald Trump has come to Dearborn trying to get the Arab and the Muslim vote, because it's become important now, because Arabs have become politically active, because the Muslim vote now matters. And I think as we're moving on in time, these anti-Muslim, anti-Arab talking points are going to fade further and further away. That Republican congressman that, I can't remember his name, but he's the one that talks about we should kill them all and all the rest of it.
Randy Fine.
Randy Fine.
Although it's probably 90% of Congress believes that.
But even him, he's becoming like a pariah even. That rhetoric just doesn't fly anymore. Maybe 10 years ago he could have said that and it would be okay. But now people are looking at him and going, this is crazy. You can't talk like this anymore.
Well, I mean, there's a giant disconnect, right? Because you're right about that. And it's not just the Muslim vote, it's now people who are against genocide vote, which is gigantic. 92% of the Democratic voters say enough. We're against Israel's military actions. But of course, the disconnect is, we can get 92% of the voters on our side. We can get 98% of the voters on our side. But our politicians are corrupt. They're never going to listen to us. So it's not just Republicans, it's the Democrats too. And they will follow Israel's orders to the end of time.
They will.
So I don't know that you have an answer to that. I don't know that anybody's got an answer.
But it's following the money, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
But it's becoming now more and more expensive to be Israel, right? The amount of people that they have to pay off, the amount of influencers that they're paying, the amount of people that they're trying to silence, the amount of lawyers that they get on to other professionals to get them fired. Unions. I speak about the UK and Australia. The unions are unionizing and passing pro-Palestine motions like the plumbers, the nurses. And if you want to fight them, you're going to fight them in Australia, the nurses union in Australia. You're going to fight that in the UK, in America. Are you going to fight all the nurses union? Are you going to fight the doctors unions? Are you going to fight teachers? Are you going to, it's become too expensive. And it's the money that, you always have to follow the money. And because now it's become too expensive and the cat's out the bag, everybody sees what's going on. That's why the apartheid system and the apartheid regime, just like South Africa, will fall, because it's too expensive to go on. The status quo can't stay there. But the question is when will it fall? When will things change? And that I don't know the answer to.
Yeah, and so you've given me hope, actually. That's a good point, and one that most people don't make. But of course, soon Israel will come and go, well, I mean, you're giving us $4 billion a year for military assistance, and you give us $20 billion for this genocide. But you know what? We're running out of money for propaganda. So American taxpayers, you now have to give us billions of dollars for propaganda so we could brainwash you into believing that a genocide is awesome when Israel does it. So that's coming next. But anyways, you have another idea for how to help the children of Gaza. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, what I was shocked about when I went to Gaza, right? Obviously, it's not the targeted snipering of children. It's not the tanks running over pregnant women and crushing them to death. It wasn't the targeted strikes on lines of food, killing women and children. I mean, that was shocking enough. But what shocked me was the fact that nobody had a plan. You would have an injured child that would come in and all of their family would be dead. And all we would do is fill out a form to say that we've got a new orphan in Gaza, like there are now tens of thousands of them. And there was no plan for what we would do with this child. There was no one to look after them. There was no supply of food for this child. There was no support for this child. And what we found was that actually there's not really a day after plan for Gaza. The day after plan for Gaza is send them to South Sudan or Libya or ethnically cleanse them. There isn't actually a plan of how do we rehabilitate 1 million children who are malnourished, who all have probably PTSD, who have the largest capita of child amputees in the world. What do we do about those children? And there wasn't a plan. And when I left, I was like, right, we need to come up with a solution. And we designed the plans for a pediatric hospital. And I've been traveling around the world trying to get support for this children's hospital. But what I don't want this to be an NGO led, because the NGOs are the ones that are being bombed. The NGOs are the ones that are being blocked from going in. The UN is also blocked from going in. So the only way that we can do this is if we get Israel's allies to come together to deal with the healthcare system, in Gaza and deal with the collapse of it. And these governments aren't going to move an inch. So we have to present to them the idea, and that's what we've been doing. And if I present to them the idea and say, this is how we save children in Gaza, and they say, no, we're not going to do that, then I'm going to turn around and say to them, well, if this is not a good idea, you come up with an idea. But you can't sit here with empty rhetoric and say, oh yeah, the children in Gaza are suffering, I feel awful, and not do anything. So look, even if they bring my hospital in or they don't bring my hospital in, the idea is that I've put this in front of them now. They either do it or they don't, but if they don't do it, they have to come up with their own answer. And we've managed to sit in front of, well, I've managed to sit in front of leaders of various countries, and I've managed to talk with foreign secretaries, and there's a lot of support for this. But the real support that we need is obviously the United States government, which is going to be difficult to do. But if you can appeal to the humanity, and I don't know how much humanity there is, but if you can appeal to the humanity and say, listen, this is a children's hospital, it's for children. It's not going to be treating Hamas fighters or whatever you say. It's going to be treating the children of Gaza. And I know, and you've seen Trump sometimes mention how it's upsetting him watching what's happening to these children. So look, maybe we can get this hospital in. But the idea of getting the hospital in, it's about breaking the medical siege of Gaza, because Gaza has been under siege for 20 years, not just the last 2 years. Before the war started, 40% of the children in Gaza had some form of malnutrition, right? 60% of them had PTSD. There was a medical blockade on Gaza. You couldn't get cancer treatment. You'd have to go to Jerusalem, and that would be on the clearance of Israelis, whether they liked you or not, or whether you had a family member that they didn't like, they wouldn't let you leave Gaza. So the blockade comes from everywhere. That's why I was there on the flotilla, supporting the guys on the Freedom Flotilla, because they were trying to break the naval blockade. I am trying to break the medical blockade. And we now have journalists all around the world coming together to try and break the media blockade on Gaza, demanding for journalists to get in. And when one of these dominoes fall, the rest of the dominoes will fall. And that's why it's really important that we all push together and we try and break the siege, whichever way it is. And I know, obviously with your journalism, that's one way of things, is breaking through the media and going on shows like Piers Morgan and going on all these different right-wing podcasts and getting the message across. That's coming through now. You're seeing right-wing analysts and pundits now arguing about whether they support Israel or not, and we're beginning to break things. We are watching now with these million children dying, and we're seeing now world governments come together and saying, we want to recognize the state of Palestine because of the starvation that we're seeing in Gaza. Things are beginning to change. I'm not saying that it's great, but things are beginning to change. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to present something to the governments that gives us a win on the board, because we need a win.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about the Democrats, but let me go through some of the things you said. Yes, for the folks at home who don't know, Israel was controlling the caloric intake of the people, of the citizens of Gaza, even before October 7th, because they are running a despotic military rule in Gaza and West Bank. American media tells you a half-truth. They say Israel's a democracy. No, it's not. Israel's a democracy within Israel, and it's a military dictatorship for 5.5 million Palestinians who live in West Bank and Gaza Strip. So it is both of those things, and that military dictatorship is disgusting, despotic, tyrannical, and it has been tyrannical for 58 years, not just since October 7th. So now, though, of course, they've taken it up, not a notch, but 20 notches. So that brings us back to America. Look, I engaged with Piers Morgan, who I think is more in the middle, and a lot of the right-wing hosts, et cetera. Went on Patrick Bet-David's show, and argued with them on some of their hosts on Israel, and I can go on and on. And I'm gratified that we have moved a lot of right-wing voters, right? And we have moved a lot of the hosts, and we have moved the national conversation. We've moved a lot of young Republicans or a lot of young Trump voters. We moved Marjorie Taylor Greene. Tom Massey was already in the right place, right? So, but unfortunately, 98% of the Republican politicians will do anything Israel orders them to do, period. So that brings me to the Democrats. The Democrats talk a big game, and they don't want to actually cut funding to Israel because they're paid by Israel, okay, but paid by AIPAC and other Israeli lobbies. But they'll say, oh my God, I want to help the children of Gaza. I'm a humanitarian. I care so much about the Palestinians. I mean, I'm paying to murder them. I've sent them Israel a $20 billion check to make sure that they complete the genocide.
Yeah.
But I care a lot about the Palestinians.
Yeah.
So have you gone to them and say, well, if you care about, I mean, I'm not even asking you to cut aid to Israel. I'm not even asking you to defy your donors. I'm just asking you, can you help fund a children's hospital in Gaza? What do they say?
Well, look, it's my first time coming over to the States to talk to these governors, so we're going to meet a few of them hopefully in the next coming weeks. But I'll tell you what has been said to me in other countries, when I've went and met with British politicians, there's been a lot of closed door solidarity. They want to support you, but they're too scared themselves to talk. And I always say the same thing to them. I say, if you're scared to talk, what about me? I'm just a doctor. I'm just a kid. You are the politicians. You are the ones with the power. If you're scared to talk, what does that mean for the rest of us? And that's why, the pro-Palestine movement was never going to be about politicians. The pro-Palestine movement has always been a people's movement. It's always been people on the outside. It's always been people like the Young Turks, Mark Lamont Hill. It's always been these kind of people that have come to the front and led the way with this. And that's the way that we're going to come out of this. The Democrats, whether they like it or not, their base has moved. And if they don't want to move, their base is going to move without them. And that's what we're seeing now in the New York mayoral race with Zoran Mamdani, is that whether they endorse him, whether AIPAC Shakur endorses him or not, right, is moving. The Democrat Party is moving. And what they will find out, the hard way or the fast way, is they'll find out that it doesn't matter whether they take the money or they don't take the money, the Democratic base has moved on without them. And that's the reason why Trump won. It wasn't because he was so polarizing that people voted for him. It was because the Democratic base didn't turn up to vote for the Democrats.
Because they never deliver.
Because they never deliver. And not only do they not deliver, but they don't play the same game. And that's why, someone like Gavin Newsom right now in California, I mean, he's now leading the charge of potentially becoming the next, presidential nominee, because he's fighting fire with fire. And the Democrats don't do that. They believe in being cordial while someone is literally eroding the freedoms and the Constitution. And I think people are beginning to want to see action. And someone like a Zoran Mamdani, who's constantly attacked in the Islamophobic rhetoric, and then he comes out and he just, they release a rap video on him. And all it does is it makes people sympathize with him more and love him more. And that's what's happening right now. And I think the Democratic Party, they have to make a real decision with themselves, because the train has left the station. And no matter how much money they do, no matter how much packaging they do, it's left. I mean, if you've got, that AIPAC Shakur line, that's now going to be a thing now that he has to live with. And he's never going to shake that off. And Zoran Mamdani, I think, won his district by 13 points. And he doesn't want to endorse him. It's over. It's over. The AIPAC within.
It's not over, but I hear you. Yeah, almost. And you're 100% right about the trend. So for those of you who don't know, Charlemagne the God, another ally of Young Turks, said Hakeem Jeffries is AIPAC Shakur. And he's of course right. That's all that Hakeem Jeffries cares about. That's all Ritchie Torres cares about. That's all Chuck Schumer cares about. That's all Joe Biden and Kamala Harris cared about. Oh, AIPAC, AIPAC, AIPAC. And number one donor for each of those politicians that I just named is AIPAC. Actually, Kamala Harris, I'm not positive about it. They were the number one donor to her in 2024. Her career, I haven't checked on, but the rest of them, their entire careers financed by AIPAC, including Joe Biden for decades, okay? They're enormous liars, they're lying to you. Charlemagne is right. I'm glad Piers is on our side now, and we've got momentum, right? In media, et cetera. So you're totally right about that. Now, the part where I am a little worried is, but I mean, like Gavin Newsom, right? So you're right, good fire with fire. I've been saying for 20 years straight on the Young Turks. For God's sake, fire with fire, right? So, but does he mean it? I mean, if Gavin Newsom says cut all funding to Israel, that means AIPAC is lost. Okay, but I would be shocked. I'd like fall down unconscious in shock if Gavin Newsom or Pete Buttigieg said cut funding to Israel. So all they're going to do is talk a good game. Then they're going to go back in, and he's going to be the new Apex Shakur.
Yeah, but that's the Democratic elite, right? That are talking like this still. But the Democrats that are coming up, the ones in the mayoral races, the ones that are running for like the mayor of New York, the councils, the ground level, the grassroots has completely changed. And like Zoran Mamdani has shown, is you don't need AIPAC money to win.
Yeah.
You don't need AIPAC
and that's what they're most worried about, Mo.
Yeah.
They're like, wait a minute. You can win without AIPAC money? What if we spent a lot of AIPAC money to defeat you like we did Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush and Marie Newman and Andy Levin? Yeah. We could just eliminate we can't eliminate him? Yeah. That's why they're so angry.
They're so angry as well because like it doesn't matter now. He won, not just not taking AIPAC money, but actively saying that he's anti-Zionist, by actively saying that he would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. And look, just to show you how the tide's changing, in Australia, we had our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, running against the opposition leader, which was Peter Dutton, who said that he would welcome Netanyahu here. He would roll out the red carpet for him. Not only did his party lose in a landslide, he actually lost his seat.
I love it.
It was one of the first times in history that that's ever happened, that the party running for Prime Minister not only lost the election, but lost his seat. And this is what I mean about the tide is beginning to change. And even though the elites right now aren't affected by it, what's happening is the party is moving on without them. And these new leaders that are coming through are not going to be swayed by AIPAC money. So, the clock and the countdown has already started for the Democratic elite. And that's why I'm hopeful. And even Israel within itself, Benjamin Netanyahu was on the PBD podcast, and he had a bit of a swing at Joe Biden, talking about how Joe Biden didn't support him enough, and how Trump is the one that's really supporting him. What that's signaling to the Democratic Party is that they will throw you under the bus and swing for the Republicans. So listen, what I would say to the Democrats is that they've already put their eggs in the Republican Party's baskets now. They're trying to move away from the Democrats while still controlling you as controlled opposition, and it's just not going to work anymore.
Yeah, so to the audience, I'll say, don't ever vote for anyone that takes AIPAC money. They're saying, I work for a foreign government, I don't work for you. Why would you agree to have a representative from Tel Aviv if you're in Cleveland or you're in Missouri? It makes no sense at all. They're like putting a flag in and going, I love it, I'm going to support Israel no matter what. And at this point, if they're taking any Israeli lobby money, that means they're pro-genocide. Why would you vote for anyone who's in favor of a genocide? What kind of a sick person would do that? Oh, right, nearly 90% of Congress. Okay, so last two things for you, Mo. So tell me about how can people support your hospital, or does it need to be a giant government? How can people help?
So, I mean, look, we're in the process now of negotiating with some major NGO organizations that will, hopefully run the hospital. And once we get them on board, then hopefully we'll bring the governments on board as well, and we will make something of this. Well, this will be a hospital run by the people, for the people, with the protection guarantees and the logistical guarantees of these Western governments. That's what we're working on. People can follow me on Instagram, can follow me on Twitter and things like that. And like I said, we're making some progress. We've got the Irish government on board. We have got the British Foreign Secretary now committing to try and get a hospital into Gaza. And we've also in talks now with the Australian government as well. And we've managed to do that in a few short months with no money.
Yeah,
right.
And so that's great work, and we'll put the links down below in the description for everybody to check out. And God bless the Irish, and they know what it's like to be called terrorists when they're fighting an oppressive occupying power. So lastly, tell me a little bit about your background. Where are you from? Where's your family from?
So I'm a Palestinian refugee. I was born in Mecca. My father was born in Gaza. And my mum was born in Jordan, but she was a Palestinian refugee that was ethnically cleansed and lived in Jordan. I grew up in the UK, moved there when I was 4 years old, educated there, but then I moved to Australia 8 years ago. I've played professional rugby as well. I've competed in MMA and jiu-jitsu, and me going back to Gaza was the first time I'd ever been back home to Palestine, and the first time that I went home was during the war. And when I was there in Gaza, it was a pretty unique experience because I was at Nasser Hospital working all this mass casualty event, and I remember I got a tap on the shoulder, and I turned around because it was busy. I thought it was someone wanting help, and it was my cousin and my uncle, and it was the first time I'd ever seen them because of the blockade. And I remember we just hugged right in the middle of the hospital. It was the first time I'd ever seen them. I'd spoken to them on the phone. And I remember just thinking to myself, we have all these bodies on the floor, we have people bleeding out, we have people dying and screams. But there was this joyous moment that we had right in the middle. And that very much is the Palestinian story, is you live between hope and despair. Hope in the moment that we're in, but despair in what's happening around us. And I feel like the Palestinian people and the Palestinian struggle is opening the eyes of the world. And Palestine, they say Gaza is going to free the world. I really believe that. And I believe that one day people will look back at the Palestinian people and how resilient they were and how brave they were. And they'll remember the suffering that they went through to free them and to free their countries from, this political occupation that all these countries are going through. And that's going to be because of the Palestinian people and how brave and resilient they've been. So, proud of where I'm from, and I'm proud of the people.
Yeah, I've been saying on the show, Palestinians are the best people on earth. So I'm trying to counteract the propaganda that American media has overwhelmed American citizens with. Oh, terrorists. No, they took in Jews after the Holocaust. They took in Armenians after the Armenian genocide. The most warm, welcoming people, and the planet has, paid them back with terror and oppression. And they didn't deserve it, and God, I hope the world wakes up and gets some humanity to help them. But look, I can't let you go without asking you about, because you mentioned it, your parents, that your dad was born in Gaza and your mom was a refugee. Because here in America, there's propaganda that in 1948 the Palestinians basically went for a picnic and never came back. The Israelis were just minding their own business in a kibbutz when all the evil Arabs attacked them. So was that the experience of your family?
My family's village was destroyed. It was burnt down. I had family members who were killed and tortured. We lost our homes. We lost our identity. My father growing up, living in that refugee camp in Gaza, the USA aid that's being cut off. They used to cut holes in the bottom of those USA aid rice bags, and my father used to wear them as trousers. That was his clothes. So, when we talk about, this was a land without a people for a people without a land. I'm the living proof that we were there. We've always been there. And, look, Jewish people might have a claim to the land, but so do Palestinians. And I think what people need to realize is that we're not going anywhere, and you need to learn to live with us side by side, and not just side by side, but you need to learn to live with us as equals. And really, that's the message of the Children's Hospital, is we need to bring back the humanity of these people. And the way to do that is to start with the children. At least let's humanize the children. And then eventually one day they might look at me, a Palestinian man, they might look at me as a human being,
Yeah, I hope to God that happens. I mean, it's such a bare minimum ask. So thank you for sharing your story. I think it's powerful, it's moving. I hope that people open up their eyes and see it. And by the way, I can't help but say one last thing, which is, no, they don't have a claim to that land. I think Israel exists. There's no way around it. It is what it is, and we're gonna have to get a two-state solution. I'm not looking to get rid of Israel. But no, oh my God talked to me 2,500 years ago, so the Canaanites should have the land. It's absurd. It's absurd. I don't care if you think you're a Canaanite or a Jim Jablowski or an Israelite or whatever stupid thing you're claiming from like thousands of years ago. Oh, my rabbi talked to God. Sure he did, okay? I don't care. I don't care about your mythology. That doesn't give you any claim, and it doesn't allow you to massacre people and displace people and torture people and set up an apartheid state.
I want to be clear on that. It's a claim. It doesn't mean it's a very good claim, but there are people that have lived there now for 70, 80 years. We're not going to ethnically cleanse them.
No, we're not.
And that's what I meant. I meant that we're not choosing to ethnically cleanse people. But like what happened in apartheid South Africa, when equality comes, a lot of people leave because they live there because of the oppression, because of the superiority. But that's going to go away when we have a free Palestine. And that's what we're hoping for eventually one day.
Yeah, we're not asking to do anything bad to Israel. We're just asking for to free the Palestinians. And it is a deeply racist position to say that the Palestinians are the only people on earth who cannot govern themselves. To say that they are too violent to ever govern themselves is by definition a bigoted, racist point of view, and almost every Israeli supporter is racist and is bigoted when they say Palestine cannot exist.
And you know, the literacy rate in Gaza was higher than that in Israel. Palestinians produce more PhDs per capita than any other Arab country. My father who was born as a refugee, who used to study under candlelight, is the leading fertility specialist in the UK, used to go to school in a tent, right? This is what the potential is of the Palestinian people. Not only can these people govern themselves, but these people can do amazing things in the world. And that's what they're worried about. They're worried about that we go on there. Not only do we just free the world when they see what's happening in Gaza, but that we'll go on and we'll show what Palestinians are. And I think that's what scares them the most, is the potential that we have. And I believe that as a Palestinian. Maybe I'm biased, but you know, we've proven time and time again how resilient we are, how open we are. That when the world was killing and massacring Jews, and the Americans and the British didn't want them to come as refugees, we took them in and they lived in our homes. When the Armenians were being massacred by Muslims, we still took them in. That's who we are, and they're scared. They're scared that if they gave us our freedom, we'd show the whole world who we are. And you know, whether they like it or not, we're here and we're gonna stay and we'll survive. And it might kill people in Gaza, but I'm still here, the descendants of people in Gaza, and there's many like me around the world, and we're here to stay. And we're gonna see a free Palestine in my lifetime, and I believe that.
It's a powerful story. Dr. Mohammed Mustafa, thank you for your great work. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, absolutely.